When a CEO shows up at her accountant's door at 4 a.m. with mascara running down her face, you know someone's world is about to shatter. But whose? The powerful woman who's never asked for help in her life? Or the single father who spent years building walls around his heart? What happens when the person you least expect becomes the only person you need? This is the story of a knock that changed everything. If you want to know how a midnight confession turned a quiet life upside down, stay with me until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The sound came at exactly 4:03 a.m. Not a tentative tap, not a polite knock. 3 sharp raps that cut through the silence like a blade through silk. Evan Brooks jerked awake, his heart hammering against his ribs. For a moment, he lay frozen in the darkness of his bedroom, every muscle tensed. In 6 years of single fatherhood, he'd learned that nothing good happened at 4 in the morning. Late-night knocks meant emergencies, hospital calls, police visits, bad news dressed in urgency. He threw off the covers and moved quickly down the short hallway of his modest 2-bedroom apartment, pausing only to glance through the crack in his daughter's door. Mila's small form was curled beneath her princess comforter, her breathing steady and soft. Still asleep. Good. The knocking came again, more insistent this time. "I'm coming," Evan muttered, his voice rough with sleep. He was wearing nothing but a worn t-shirt and flannel pajama pants, his dark hair sticking up at odd angles. Through the peephole, he could make out a figure in the dim hallway, but the features were obscured. His hand hovered over the deadbolt. Every instinct screamed caution. This was Portland, not exactly a war zone, but his neighborhood wasn't the kind of place where surprise visitors arrived with good intentions at this hour. "Who is it?" he called through the door. There was a pause. Then a voice he knew, though he'd never heard it sound quite like this. Rough, trembling, stripped of its usual commanding edge. "It's Lena." Evan's brain stuttered to a halt. Lena, as in Lena Whitmore, his boss, the CEO of Whitmore Analytics, the woman whose signature appeared on his paychecks, whose approval could make or break careers, whose presence in a room made senior executives straighten their spines and check their work twice. What the hell was she doing at his apartment at 4 in the morning? He unlocked the door and pulled it open. The woman standing in his hallway bore little resemblance to the polished executive he saw at the office. Her dark hair, usually swept into an elegant twist, hung loose and tangled around her shoulders. Her makeup, and Lena always wore makeup, subtle but perfectly applied, was smeared beneath red-rimmed eyes. She held a pair of expensive heels in one hand, dangling them by their straps like an afterthought. Her black dress, the kind that probably cost more than Evan's monthly rent, was wrinkled and twisted slightly to one side. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. Those fierce, intelligent eyes that could dissect a quarterly report in seconds or silence a boardroom with a single glance. They looked lost, hollow, haunted by something Evan couldn't name. "Lena," he breathed, too shocked to remember formality. "What? Are you okay?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she seemed to study him, taking in his rumpled appearance, the warm glow of the lamp he'd left on in the living room behind him, the family photos on the wall visible through the doorway. Her gaze lingered there, on an image of Evan and Mila at the zoo, both of them laughing at something beyond the camera's frame. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Can I come in?" Every rational part of Evan's brain screamed warnings. This was his boss, his CEO. A woman so far above his pay grade that their interactions at work consisted of brief nods in the hallway and the occasional mass email. Inviting her into his home at 4 in the morning was the kind of decision that led to HR meetings and awkward explanations and possibly unemployment. But the rational part of his brain wasn't what made him step aside and hold the door open wider. "Of course," he said quietly. "Come in." Lena walked past him, and he caught the scent of expensive perfume mixed with something sharper, vodka maybe, or gin. She moved into his living room with uncertain steps, so different from the confident stride he was used to seeing. She stood in the center of the small space, looking around as if seeing a foreign country for the first time. Evan closed the door softly and followed her, hyper-aware of how small his apartment must seem to someone who undoubtedly lived in one of those glass-walled penthouses downtown. The furniture was second-hand but clean. The walls were decorated with Mila's artwork and family photos rather than expensive prints. A basket of laundry sat folded on the couch. He'd meant to put it away before bed, but had fallen asleep during Mila's third request for one more story. "I'm sorry," Lena said suddenly, turning to face him. "I shouldn't have come here. I don't know what I was thinking. I'll go." She took a step toward the door, but Evan moved into her path without thinking. "Lena, wait." He kept his voice gentle, the same tone he used when Mila woke from nightmares. "You came here for a reason. Whatever it is, you don't have to leave. Just talk to me." She stared at him, and for a moment he thought she might bolt anyway. Then something in her seemed to crack. Her shoulders sagged. The heels slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a soft thud. "I had a date tonight," she said, and laughed, a bitter, broken sound that made Evan's chest ache. "A date? God, I sound like a teenager. I had a date, and it was terrible, and I told him to go to hell, and then I got in my car and I just drove. I didn't know where I was going, and then I was here." Evan gestured toward the couch. "Sit, please. I'll make coffee." "You don't have to." "I'm making coffee," he said firmly. "Sit." To his surprise, she obeyed. Lena Whitmore, who commanded a company with over 300 employees, who'd built an analytics firm from nothing into a multi-million-dollar operation, who made decisions that affected dozens of lives daily. She sat on his second-hand couch and looked small. Evan moved into the kitchen, grateful for something to do with his hands. Through the open doorway, he could see Lena perched on the edge of the couch cushion, her head in her hands. He measured coffee grounds with practiced efficiency, filling the silence with the familiar sounds of the machine brewing. "How do you take it?" he called softly. "Black? 2 sugars?" Of course she took it sweet. He'd noticed that about her, in the rare times he'd seen her in the break room. Lena Whitmore, with her sharp suits and sharper mind, doctored her coffee like a kid let loose at a dessert buffet. He brought 2 mugs back to the living room and handed her one, then settled into the armchair across from the couch. Not too close, not presumptuous, just there. Lena wrapped both hands around the mug, seeking its warmth. She took a sip and closed her eyes. "This is good coffee," she murmured. "Costco special," Evan replied. "Nothing fancy." She opened her eyes and looked at him then, really looked at him, and Evan felt something shift in the air between them. "You're wondering why I'm here." "I'm wondering if you're okay," he corrected gently. "The rest, we can get to the rest." Lena took another sip of coffee, and when she spoke again, her voice was steadier. "His name was Richard Caldwell, VP at some investment firm. We met at a charity gala 3 months ago. He asked me to dinner. I said yes because I'm 43 years old, and the last time I went on a date, Evan, the last time I did something just for myself and not for the company, I honestly can't remember." She set the mug down on the coffee table with deliberate care. "We went to Canard. Do you know it? That French place on Burnside that requires reservations 3 months in advance?" He spent the entire dinner talking about himself, his portfolio, his connections, his opinions on market volatility, and which tech startups were worth watching. Every time I tried to contribute, he'd nod like he was humoring a child and then redirect back to his achievements. Evan could picture it perfectly. Some overstuffed peacock in an expensive suit, oblivious to the brilliant woman sitting across from him. Then, over dessert, Lena continued, her voice dropping, he leaned in close and said, "You know, Lena, I admire ambitious women. It's sexy. But a man still needs to feel like a man, if you know what I mean. So maybe in our relationship we could agree that I handle the big decisions and you handle everything else." Evan's jaw tightened. He didn't. "He did." Lena smiled, but there was no humor in it. "And do you know what I did? I didn't throw wine in his face. I didn't make a scene. I very calmly told him that our evening was over, that I would be paying for my own meal, and that he should lose my number. Then I walked out." "Good," Evan said firmly. "Is it?" Lena's eyes shone with unshed tears. "Because I sat in my car outside that restaurant for 20 minutes, Evan. And all I could think was that he's the fifth man this year who's made me feel like I'm too much, too successful, too opinionated, too everything. And maybe they're right. Maybe I've built this empire and lost everything that matters along the way. That's not true. How would you know? The words came out sharp, defensive. Lena immediately looked away. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. It's okay, Evan said quietly. You're upset. And for what it's worth, anyone who makes you feel like you're too much is really just saying you're more than they can handle. That's their limitation, not yours. Lena looked at him, and Evan saw something flicker in her expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. How do you do that? Do what? Say the right thing. You've been doing it since I got here. No judgment, no awkwardness, just steadiness. Evan shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. I'm a single dad. You learn to handle curveballs. Tell me about that, Lena said suddenly, leaning forward. Tell me about your daughter. It was a deflection, Evan knew, a way to shift focus away from her own pain, but he also sensed that she genuinely wanted to know, and he'd never been able to resist talking about Mila. Her name is Mila. She's 6, first grade at Bridgewater Elementary. He couldn't help the smile that spread across his face. She's obsessed with dinosaurs right now. Not princess dinosaurs or cute cartoon ones. She wants to know about the Cretaceous period and which fossils have been found in Oregon and whether velociraptors really had feathers. Lena laughed, and this time it sounded real. She sounds wonderful. She is. She's everything. Evan's voice softened. Her mother left when Mila was 8 months old, just packed a bag one morning and left a note saying she couldn't do it anymore. Motherhood, I mean. She said she felt trapped, that this wasn't the life she'd signed up for. God, Evan, I'm so sorry. He shook his head. Don't be. It hurt like hell at the time, but honestly, Mila and I are better off. Her mother would have stayed miserable, and kids feel that. They absorb it. Now it's just us, and we're good. We're really good. You gave up a lot, though, Lena said softly. I've seen your file. You were on track for senior accountant before Mila was born. Engineering background before that. You could have gone further. Evan met her eyes steadily. I could have. But who would have made sure Mila had breakfast every morning? Who would have been there when she fell off her bike and scraped her knee? Who would have read her bedtime stories and taught her that she's worth more than any achievement or title? He paused. Success isn't always measured in promotions, Lena. Sometimes it's measured in the moments that matter. The silence that followed was heavy with something Evan couldn't name. Lena was looking at him like she was seeing him for the first time, really seeing him, not as an employee or a number on a spreadsheet, but as a person, a man, someone who'd made choices she was only now beginning to understand. That's why I came here, she whispered. Evan's heart stuttered. What? I didn't just drive aimlessly. I looked up your address in the employee database. She laughed shakily. God, that sounds so creepy when I say it out loud. But I needed to see what it looked like. A life that made sense. A life where someone chose the things that actually matter. Lena, you're the only person at that company who treats me like a human being, she continued, the words tumbling out now like water through a broken dam. Everyone else sees the CEO. They see power and decisions and quarterly earnings. But you? You hold the elevator for me. You say good morning, like you mean it. Last month, when I was working late and you were leaving, you asked if I was okay. Do you remember that? He did. It had been a Thursday night, and he'd been rushing to pick up Mila from after-school care. Lena had been alone in the office, staring at her computer screen with an expression of such exhaustion that he'd paused despite being late. I remember, he said quietly. No one else asked. No one else even noticed. Lena's voice cracked. And I went home to my empty apartment that night, and I thought about you. About how you probably went home to your daughter and you made dinner together, and you laughed about her day and you were tired but happy, and I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd been happy. Evan's chest felt tight. Lena, I think... I'm not drunk, she interrupted, as if reading his thoughts. I had 2 glasses of wine at dinner, and that was hours ago. I'm completely sober, which means I have no excuse for saying what I'm about to say. She stood up abruptly, and Evan rose with her, uncertain. They were only a few feet apart now, close enough that he could see the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the vulnerability in her expression. I like you, Evan, Lena said simply. I have for months. And I know that's completely inappropriate. You work for me. You have a daughter to think about. I have no right to bring this to your door at 4 a.m, but I couldn't lie to myself anymore. Not after tonight. Not after realizing that the only person I wanted to talk to, the only person who makes me feel like I'm not completely alone in this world, is you. The words hung in the air between them, impossible to take back. Evan's mind raced. This was his boss. This was the CEO of his company. This was a woman who could fire him with a phone call, who existed in a stratosphere so far above his own that they might as well be different species. Getting involved with her would be reckless, dangerous, potentially devastating to the stable life he'd built for Mila. And yet, when he looked at Lena, really looked at her, past the title and the power and the designer clothes pooled at her feet, he saw someone achingly familiar. Someone who'd sacrificed connection for success. Someone who'd built walls so high she couldn't see over them anymore. Someone who was tired of being strong and just wanted, for once, to be seen. He understood that. God, he understood that more than she knew. Lena, he said carefully, you're going through something tonight. You had a bad date, you're questioning things, I get it. But in the morning, I'll still feel this way, she interrupted. I know you don't believe me. Why would you? But I'm not confused, Evan. I'm clearer right now than I've been in years. She reached out slowly, giving him time to move away, and placed her hand against his chest. Her palm was warm through his thin t-shirt, and Evan felt his traitorous heart hammer against her touch. I can feel your heart racing, she whispered. So maybe I'm not the only one feeling this. She wasn't. Evan knew she wasn't. Because despite every logical reason to step back, to put distance between them, to remember who they were to each other in the daylight world, he didn't want to move. He wanted to stay right here, in this impossible moment, with this impossible woman who'd knocked on his door and cracked something open inside him that he thought was sealed shut forever. But he also knew something Lena didn't seem to grasp yet. Wanting something wasn't the same as being ready for it, and the cost of being wrong wasn't something he could afford. I'm not saying I don't feel anything, he said quietly, placing his hand over hers. Not pulling it away, just acknowledging it. But I have to be careful, Lena. Everything I do affects Mila. Every choice, every risk. I can't just follow my heart when there's a 6-year-old who depends on me to be smart. Pain flashed across Lena's face, but she nodded. You're right. Of course you're right. I shouldn't have put you in this position. That's not what I'm saying. Evan caught her hand as she started to pull away. I'm saying we need to be careful. I'm saying this isn't something we can figure out at 4 a.m. after a terrible date and too much honesty. Then when? Lena asked, and there was such naked hope in her voice that it nearly broke him. I don't know, Evan admitted, but not like this. Not when you're hurting and I'm half asleep and we're both too vulnerable to think straight. Lena closed her eyes, and a single tear tracked down her cheek. I came here hoping you'd tell me I was crazy. That would have been easier. I know. Evan squeezed her hand gently. But I've never been very good at easy. They stood there for a long moment, hands clasped, the truth of what existed between them hovering in the air like something fragile and new. Then Lena took a shaky breath and stepped back. I should go, she said. Before I say anything else I can't take back. You can stay, Evan offered, on the couch. You shouldn't drive if you're upset. She smiled sadly. If I stay, I don't think either of us will sleep. She was probably right. Evan walked her to the door, watching as she slipped her expensive heels back on. They made her taller, more imposing, but she still looked fragile in a way that made his chest ache. At the threshold, she paused. On Monday, at the office, we'll be professional, Evan assured her. I promise. I don't want that. The words came out fierce. I don't want to pretend this didn't happen. Then we won't, he said simply. But we also can't figure out what it means in a hallway or a conference room, so we take our time. We're careful. We think about what we're doing before we do it. Lena searched his face, then nodded slowly. Okay. Careful. I can do careful. But as she turned to go, she looked back one more time. Evan? Thank you for opening the door, for listening, for not making me feel crazy." "You're not crazy," he said softly. "You're just human, like the rest of us." He watched until she disappeared into the elevator, then closed the door and leaned against it, his heart still racing. The apartment felt different now, charged with the ghost of her presence. Her coffee mug still sat on his table. The faint scent of her perfume lingered in the air. Evan moved through the apartment quietly, checking on Mila one more time. She'd rolled over in her sleep, one arm flung above her head, her dark hair splayed across the pillow. His daughter, his world, the reason he couldn't afford to be reckless with his heart. But as he lay in bed, watching the first hints of dawn creep through his window, Evan couldn't stop thinking about Lena's words. "You're the one I want," not the one she needed in the moment, not the one who was convenient or safe or appropriate, the one she wanted, despite everything that made it complicated, despite all the reasons it couldn't work. And the terrifying truth was that somewhere in the past few hours, between the knock on his door and the touch of her hand on his chest, Evan had realized something he'd been avoiding for months. He wanted her too. He wanted her sharp intelligence and her lonely eyes and her too sweet coffee. He wanted her laugh when it was real and her honesty when it hurt. He wanted to be the person she came to at 4 a.m. when the world felt too heavy. But wanting wasn't enough. It had never been enough. As sleep finally claimed him, Evan made himself a promise. He would be careful. He would be smart. He would protect Mila above all else. And if there was a path forward, one that didn't require him to choose between the woman who'd knocked on his door and the daughter sleeping down the hall, he would find it, but only if it was real, only if it was right, only if it was worth the risk. Monday morning arrived with Portland's typical gray drizzle, the kind that wasn't quite rain but left everything damp and glistening. Evan dropped Mila off at school, listening to her chatter about the science project they were starting, something about the water cycle that required cotton balls and food coloring. He made appropriate sounds of interest while his stomach churned with anticipation. He hadn't heard from Lena since she'd left his apartment Saturday morning. No texts, no calls, nothing. He told himself that was good, that it meant they were both taking time to think, to be rational. But the silence felt loaded, heavy with unspoken words. The office of Whitmore Analytics occupied 3 floors of a renovated warehouse in the Pearl District. Evan's cubicle was on the 2nd floor, tucked in a corner with a view of the parking lot. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady work with good benefits and flexible hours that let him be there for Mila. He settled into his chair at 8:47 a.m., 13 minutes early as always. His routine was sacred. Boot up the computer, check emails, review the day's accounting tasks, make a fresh pot of coffee for the department. Predictable. Safe. Exactly how he liked it. Except today, nothing felt safe. "Morning, Evan," called Rebecca from the next cubicle over. She was in her 50s, had worked at the company since its founding, and knew everything about everyone. "How was your weekend?" "Quiet," he lied smoothly. "You?" "Oh, husband wanted to go hiking. I wanted to binge watch cooking shows. We compromised and did both." She laughed. "Hey, did you hear about the board meeting this morning? Apparently there's going to be some announcement." Evan's fingers froze over his keyboard. "What kind of announcement?" "No idea, but Karen in HR said Lena's been in her office since 6 a.m., which usually means something big." Rebecca lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Think someone's getting fired?" "I doubt it," Evan said, forcing his voice to remain neutral. "Probably just quarterly planning stuff." But his mind was racing. Lena had been here since 6. Had she slept at all? Was she avoiding the rest of the weekend the same way he'd been trying to distract himself? The morning crept by with excruciating slowness. Evan buried himself in spreadsheets, reconciling accounts, and double-checking figures. Numbers were safe. Numbers made sense. They added up or they didn't, with no gray area in between. Unlike whatever was happening between him and Lena. At 10:15, his phone buzzed with a calendar notification. All hands meeting, 10:30 a.m., main conference room. Mandatory attendance. Evan's stomach dropped. All hands meetings were rare, usually reserved for major announcements, new contracts, restructuring, that kind of thing. The timing felt suspicious. He made his way to the conference room along with what seemed like the entire company. The space was packed, employees lining the walls when the chairs filled up. Evan found a spot near the back, grateful for the anonymity. At exactly 10:30, Lena walked in. She was impeccable. Navy suit, crisp white blouse, hair pulled back in that elegant twist. Her makeup was flawless, her expression composed. Nothing about her suggested a woman who'd shown up at an employee's apartment at 4 in the morning, crying over a bad date. But Evan knew. He saw the faint shadows beneath her eyes that concealer couldn't quite hide. The way her hands gripped the edge of the podium a little too tightly. The nearly imperceptible pause before she smiled at the assembled crowd. "Thank you all for coming," Lena began, her voice clear and authoritative. "I'll keep this brief since I know you all have work to get back to. I wanted to announce that Whitmore Analytics has been approached by Meridian Tech with an acquisition offer." A murmur rippled through the room. Meridian Tech was huge, a Silicon Valley giant worth billions. An acquisition by them would change everything. "Now, before anyone panics," Lena continued, raising one hand, "I want to be clear that no decisions have been made. The board and I are carefully evaluating the offer, but any deal would include protections for employees. Your jobs would be secure. Your benefits would be maintained or improved. This would be a growth opportunity, not a shutdown." Someone in the front row asked about timeline. Someone else wanted to know about leadership changes. Lena fielded each question with practiced ease, giving enough information to satisfy without overpromising. Evan watched her work the room and felt something twist in his chest. This was Lena in her element, confident, commanding, brilliant. The CEO who'd built a company from nothing. The woman everyone in this room respected, and yes, feared a little. And Saturday morning, she'd stood in his living room and told him she was tired of being alone. The meeting wrapped up 20 minutes later. Employees filed out, buzzing with speculation and excitement. Evan hung back, uncertain whether to try to catch Lena's eye or slip away unnoticed. The decision was made for him. "Evan Brooks." Lena's voice cut through the chatter. She was still at the podium, gathering her notes, but her eyes were locked on him. "Could you stay for a moment? I have a question about the quarterly projections." It was a reasonable request. Professional. No one would think twice about the CEO asking an accountant for a quick clarification. But Evan saw the truth in her eyes. This had nothing to do with projections. The room emptied. The door clicked shut. And suddenly, they were alone. Lena didn't move from behind the podium. Evan didn't approach. The space between them felt charged, dangerous, like the moment before a storm breaks. "How are you?" she asked quietly. "I should be asking you that," Evan replied. "I'm fine. Busy. Meridian's offer is legitimate, and the board is taking it seriously." She paused. "But that's not why I asked you to stay." "I figured. I meant what I said Saturday night, morning, whatever we're calling it." Lena's fingers drummed against the podium. "I know you need time. I know this is complicated, but I also know that pretending nothing happened isn't going to work for me." "What do you want me to say, Lena?" "I want you to tell me if I'm alone in this." Her voice cracked just slightly. "I want to know if you felt even a fraction of what I felt when you held my hand. Because if I'm making this up in my head, if this is all one-sided, then I need to know so I can move on." Evan closed his eyes. This was the moment. The crossroads. He could lie. He could be smart and safe and tell her that Saturday morning was a fluke, that he'd been half asleep and confused, that whatever she thought she saw in him wasn't real. But he'd never been good at lying to people who mattered. "You're not alone," he said quietly. "I felt it too." Lena's breath caught. "Then why are we standing on opposite sides of this room?" "Because I'm terrified," Evan admitted. "Because I have a daughter who depends on me. Because you're my boss and this could blow up both our lives. Because I don't know how to want something this much and still be responsible." "What if we didn't have to choose?" Lena moved around the podium now, cutting the distance between them by half. "What if we could be careful and still try?" "How? You just announced a potential acquisition. Your life is about to get infinitely more complicated. And mine is PTA meetings and bedtime stories and making sure there's milk in the fridge. We exist in completely different worlds, Lena. So we build a bridge, she said simply. People do it all the time. They find ways to make different worlds fit together. Evan wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to believe that it could be that simple. But he'd learned the hard way that wanting wasn't enough, that good intentions didn't protect you from consequences. I need to think, he said finally. This isn't a decision I can make standing in a conference room on a Monday morning. Lena's face fell, but she nodded. Okay, think. Take all the time you need. She moved toward the door, but Evan's voice stopped her. Lena? She turned back. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I wish I was braver. I wish I was the kind of person who could just take a leap and trust that it'll work out. But I've already had one person walk away from me and Mila. I can't risk putting her through that again. Understanding flickered across Lena's face. I'm not her mother, Evan. I know, but you're also not just anyone. If this goes wrong, I don't just lose someone I care about. I lose my job, my stability, everything Mila depends on. And if it goes right? Lena asked softly. What then? Evan didn't have an answer for that because he hadn't let himself imagine it. Imagining the good outcome felt like tempting fate, like setting himself up for disappointment. But as Lena left the conference room and he stood there alone, surrounded by empty chairs and the lingering scent of her perfume, Evan couldn't help but wonder, what if she was right? What if the thing he was most afraid of was also the thing he needed most? That evening, Evan picked up Mila from after-school care with his mind still churning through the conversation in the conference room. She bounced into the car with her usual energy, her backpack nearly as big as she was, chattering about how Tommy Richards had gotten in trouble for putting glue in Sarah's hair. And then Mrs. Patterson made him sit in the corner for the whole recess, and he cried, but not like really crying, just fake crying to get out of trouble. And Sarah's mom had to come pick her up early because the glue was in her hair so bad. And, Dad, are you listening? Evan glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Of course I'm listening. Tommy put glue in Sarah's hair. Mrs. Patterson put him in timeout. Sarah went home early. Not timeout, the corner. There's a difference. Mila kicked her feet against her car seat. What's for dinner? I was thinking tacos. Yes! She pumped her small fist in the air. Can I help make them? When have I ever made tacos without you? The familiar rhythm of their evening routine should have calmed him. It always did. The predictable pattern of homework at the kitchen table while he prepped ingredients, Mila's voice reading aloud from her phonics workbook, the smell of seasoned meat and warm tortillas filling their small apartment. This was his life. This was what he'd chosen, what he'd built from the wreckage of his marriage. Simple, safe, enough. Except tonight, it didn't feel like enough. Tonight, he couldn't stop thinking about Lena's question. What if it goes right? Dad, you're burning the meat. Evan jerked back to attention, quickly stirring the pan. Thanks, kiddo. Good catch. Mila peered at him from her spot at the table, her pencil hovering over her worksheet. Are you okay? You're being weird. I'm fine, just tired. You're always tired. She said it matter-of-factly, without accusation. Maybe you need more sleep, Mrs. Patterson says kids need 10 hours and grown-ups need 8. How many hours do you get? Evan thought about Saturday morning, about lying awake until dawn, replaying every word Lena had said. Probably not enough. See? You should go to bed earlier. I could help you make a bedtime chart like we did for me when I was little. You're still little, Evan said, ruffling her hair as he passed. But I appreciate the offer. They ate dinner together at their small table, Mila chattering about her upcoming science project while Evan made appropriate sounds of encouragement. After dinner came bath time, then pajamas, then the nightly negotiation over how many books they'd read before lights out. 3, Mila declared, already pulling books from her shelf. We need 3 tonight because we only did 2 last night and that's not fair. We did 3 last night. No, we did 2. I counted. Evan was 90% sure they'd done 3, but Mila's conviction was absolute, and frankly, he didn't have the energy to argue. Fine. 3 books. But then straight to sleep. Deal? Deal. They settled into her bed together, Evan's back against the headboard, Mila tucked against his side. She'd chosen a book about dinosaurs, one about a girl who built a robot, and one about a family of bears learning to share. Evan read in the voices she loved, the squeaky mouse, the gruff bear, the silly robot, and felt the knot in his chest loosen slightly. This was real. This mattered. Whatever was happening with Lena, whatever confusion he felt, this right here was what he couldn't risk losing. "Dad?" Mila's voice was sleepy, her eyes already half closed. "Yeah, sweetheart? Do you ever get lonely?" The question hit him like a physical blow. Evan's first instinct was to deflect, to assure her that he was fine, that having her was enough. But he'd made a promise when she was born. He would never lie to his daughter about important things. "Sometimes," he admitted quietly. "Why do you ask?" Mila shrugged, her small shoulder moving against his ribs. "I don't know. Tommy's parents came to pick him up together today, and they were laughing about something, and it made me think that you don't have anyone to laugh with except me. You're pretty good company, though." "I know, but..." She trailed off, struggling with words too big for 6 years old. "Don't you want someone who's not me, like a grown-up person?" Evan's throat tightened. "Where's this coming from, Mila?" "I just think you should have someone. Like how I have Zoe at school, and she's my best friend, and we laugh about stuff that's just ours. You should have that too." "I have friends," Evan said, even though it wasn't entirely true. He had work acquaintances, people he was friendly with. But real friends, people he could call at 2 in the morning or share his fears with, those had fallen away over the years, casualties of single parenthood and exhaustion. "Not like that," Mila insisted. "I mean someone special. Someone who makes you smile the way you make me smile." Evan looked down at his daughter, her dark eyes so earnest, so worried about him in a way that no 6-year-old should have to worry about their parent. And he realized something that simultaneously broke his heart and gave him hope. Mila wasn't afraid of him finding someone. She was worried that he wouldn't. "If I did find someone special," he said carefully, "how would you feel about that?" Mila considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important questions. "Would they be nice to me?" "They'd have to be. Anyone who wasn't nice to you wouldn't be special to me." "Would they try to be my mom?" There it was, the fear underneath the question. Evan pulled her closer. "No one could ever replace your mom, even though she's not here, and no one would try. But they could be someone who cares about both of us." "Like a friend who's also grown up?" "Yeah, something like that." Mila yawned, settling deeper into her pillow. "Okay, I think that would be good. You need more people to laugh with." She was asleep within minutes, her breathing evening out into the soft rhythm of childhood dreams. Evan stayed there long after she'd drifted off, his mind racing. Out of the mouths of babes, his daughter had just given him permission for something he hadn't even admitted he wanted. More than permission, she'd actively encouraged it, worried about his happiness in a way that made him ache. But wanting Mila's blessing and knowing what to do with it were two different things entirely. The next morning arrived too quickly. Evan went through the motions of getting Mila ready for school, making breakfast, packing lunch, checking homework. At the office, he buried himself in work, grateful for the distraction of numbers and spreadsheets. He didn't see Lena at all on Tuesday or Wednesday. By Thursday, he'd convinced himself that maybe the whole thing had been a moment of weakness on both their parts, that they'd silently agreed to let it fade into awkward memory. Then, Thursday afternoon, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "It's Lena. I got your number from HR. I know that's probably inappropriate, but I've stopped caring about appropriate where you're concerned. Can we talk?" "Not at the office. Somewhere neutral. Please." Evan stared at the screen for a full minute, his heart hammering. He should say no. He should maintain boundaries. He should be smart. His fingers typed before his brain could stop them. "When?" The response came within seconds. "Tomorrow night, 7 p.m. There's a coffee shop on 23rd, Palio. Do you know it?" He did. It was quiet, tucked away. The kind of place where you could have a conversation without the entire office finding out about it. "I'll be there." "Thank you, Evan." He set his phone down with shaking hands. This was happening. Whatever this was, it was actually happening. The rest of Thursday crawled by. Friday was worse. Evan found himself checking the clock every 10 minutes, watching the hours tick closer to 7. He'd arranged for Mila to have a play date at her friend Zoe's house, with Zoe's mom agreeing to keep her until 8. That gave him an hour. 60 minutes to figure out what the hell he was doing. At 6:45, he pulled up outside Palio. The coffee shop was exactly as he remembered. Warm lighting, mismatched furniture, local art on the walls. Through the window, he could see Lena already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups in front of her. She'd beaten him here. Of course she had. Evan took a breath and walked inside. Lena looked up as he approached, and the expression on her face was so raw, so vulnerable, that it stopped him in his tracks. This wasn't the CEO. This wasn't the polished executive. This was just a woman, scared and hoping and trying not to show either. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi." Evan slid into the chair across from her. "You got me coffee." I remembered. Black. 1 sugar. She pushed the cup toward him. "I figured if we're going to have this conversation, we should at least be caffeinated." He took a sip. It was perfect. "Thank you." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The coffee shop hummed with quiet conversation around them, the hiss of the espresso machine, the clink of cups on saucers. Normal sounds, normal life happening while Evan felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff. "I've been thinking about what you said," Lena began, "about needing to be careful, about Mila. And you're right. You're absolutely right to be cautious." Evan's heart sank. This was it. She was going to be reasonable. They were going to acknowledge that this was impossible and agree to go back to being boss, an employee, and nothing more. "But I've also been thinking," Lena continued, "about all the ways I've played it safe in my life. I built a company by taking calculated risks, but in my personal life, I've been a coward, Evan. I've chosen work over relationships every single time because work was safer. Work made sense. Work wouldn't leave me." "Lena, let me finish, please." She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "I'm 43 years old. I've been divorced for 8 years. In those 8 years, do you know how many real dates I've been on? 4. 4 dates. And every single one of them was with someone who wanted the idea of me, but not the reality. Someone who wanted the successful CEO they could show off at parties, but couldn't handle the actual person underneath." Evan stayed quiet, letting her speak. "And then you opened your door at 4 in the morning, Lena said, her voice breaking slightly. "And you didn't judge me. You didn't try to fix me. You just saw me. The real me. The one who's lonely and scared and tired of pretending she has it all figured out." "That's because I don't have it figured out either," Evan admitted. "I'm barely holding things together most days." "You're doing better than you think." Lena leaned forward. "Evan, I've watched you. I know that sounds creepy, but I don't mean it like that. I mean, I've noticed things. The way you always make time to talk to people in the break room, even when you're clearly rushing. The way you volunteer to help with the company picnic every year, even though it's not in your job description. The way you leave at 5 o'clock sharp every single day because you have a daughter waiting. That's just being a decent person. No, it's more than that. It's integrity. It's knowing what matters and living accordingly. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" She paused. "I respect you, Evan. I respected you before I liked you, and I think that's why this feels different, why I'm willing to risk making a fool of myself." Evan's chest felt tight. "You're not making a fool of yourself." "Then what am I doing?" "Because I asked you here to tell you that I can't stop thinking about you, and that terrifies me, and I don't know what to do with it." The honesty in her words cut through every defense Evan had built. He could lie. He could deflect. Or he could match her bravery with his own. "I talked to Mila," he said quietly. Lena's eyes widened. "You told her about us?" "No, God, no. But she asked me if I was lonely, if I wanted someone special in my life." He smiled sadly. "Apparently my 6-year-old daughter is more emotionally intelligent than I am because she's worried I don't have anyone to laugh with." "What did you tell her?" "I asked her how she'd feel if I did find someone, and she said..." Evan paused, the words still feeling surreal. "She said it would be good, that I need more people to laugh with." Lena's breath caught. "Evan? I'm not saying this to pressure you or to suggest we rush into anything," he continued quickly, "but I realized something. I've been so focused on protecting Mila from potential hurt that I haven't considered what I'm teaching her by playing it safe, that love isn't worth the risk, that being alone is better than being vulnerable. And I don't want her to learn that. What do you want her to learn? Evan met Lena's eyes steadily. That sometimes the scariest thing is also the right thing. That you can be careful and brave at the same time. That the people worth having in your life are the ones who see you completely and choose you anyway. Lena's eyes shone with tears. Is that what you're doing? Choosing me? I'm choosing to try, Evan corrected gently. I'm choosing to see where this goes, carefully, without rushing, with Mila's well-being at the center of every decision. But yes, I'm choosing to try. A tear slipped down Lena's cheek. She wiped it away quickly, laughing a little. I came here prepared to convince you. I had arguments ready, logical reasons why this could work. I don't need logic, Evan said. I need honesty, I need patience, and I need to know that if this gets hard, and it will get hard, you're not going to walk away. I won't. The certainty in her voice was absolute. I've walked away from enough in my life. I'm done running from things that matter. They sat there, looking at each other across the small table, the weight of what they'd just agreed to settling between them. It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't a promise of forever. It was something more fragile and more valuable, a mutual decision to be brave enough to try. So where do we start? Lena asked. Slowly, Evan said. We start slowly. We get to know each other outside of work. We're careful about boundaries at the office. And at some point, when it feels right, I introduce you to Mila as my friend. We let her get comfortable with you before there's any talk of anything more. That could take months. Probably. I can do months, Lena said firmly. I can do whatever timeline you need. Evan felt something in his chest loosen. Okay, then let's start with this. Tell me something about yourself that's not on your LinkedIn profile. Lena laughed, surprised. Okay, I'm terrified of birds, specifically pigeons. I know that's ridiculous, but when I was 7, I got swarmed by pigeons in Central Park, and I've never gotten over it. That's not ridiculous. That's traumatic. Evan grinned. Your turn. Ask me something. What did you want to be when you were a kid? Before accounting? Before engineering? When you were Mila's age? A paleontologist, Evan admitted. I was obsessed with dinosaurs. Had all the books? All the toy figures? I wanted to dig up fossils and discover new species. That's where Mila gets it, Lena said softly. The dinosaur obsession. Yeah, I might have encouraged that particular interest. He paused. My turn. What's something that makes you happy? Not professional achievement, just happy. Lena thought about it, really thought, and Evan realized she was struggling to answer. Finally, she said, thunderstorms. I love sitting by a window during a thunderstorm with something warm to drink, just watching the rain and listening to the thunder. It makes me feel small in a good way, like my problems don't matter as much as I think they do. Evan filed that away, that small piece of her. I like that. They talked for the next 45 minutes, trading questions and answers, learning the small details that didn't fit on resumes or LinkedIn profiles. Lena was an only child who'd always wanted siblings. Evan had a brother in Seattle they barely spoke to anymore. Lena could cook exactly 3 dishes well and burned everything else. Evan had taught himself to cook out of necessity after Mila was born. Lena had never been camping. Evan had spent summers in the woods as a kid. At 7:50, Evan's phone buzzed, Zoe's mom letting him know Mila was ready to be picked up. I have to go, he said reluctantly. I know. Lena didn't move to stand. Can we do this again? Yes, but not tomorrow. I have Mila all weekend. Next week then. Same time, same place? It's a date. The word slipped out before Evan could stop it, and they both froze. Then Lena smiled, and it transformed her entire face. Yeah, she said softly. It is. Evan stood, then hesitated. Every instinct screamed to kiss her goodbye, to touch her hand, to do something to acknowledge the shift between them. But they'd agreed to go slowly, and slow meant restraint. Good night, Lena. Good night, Evan. He made it to the door before he looked back. Lena was still sitting there watching him, her expression so full of hope and fear and possibility that it made his breath catch. Then he stepped outside into the cool Portland evening and let himself feel it. The terrifying, exhilarating reality of what he'd just done. He'd chosen to try. The weekend passed in a blur of normal activities that felt anything but normal. Evan took Mila to the park on Saturday, watched her scramble over playground equipment with her friends, pushed her on the swings until his arms ached. Sunday was grocery shopping and laundry and meal prep for the week ahead. Ordinary life. The same routine he'd been following for years. Except now, everything felt different, because now he had something to look forward to beyond the next work deadline or the next parent-teacher conference. He had Friday nights at Palio, learning the pieces of Lena Whitmore that the world didn't get to see. Monday at work was strange. He saw Lena twice, once in the hallway where they exchanged professional nods, and once in a department meeting where she presented quarterly targets. Each time, their eyes met for a fraction of a second longer than necessary, carrying the weight of everything unspoken. It was excruciating and thrilling in equal measure. Tuesday brought the first real test. Evan was working late, finishing up a reconciliation that needed to be done before morning, when his desk phone rang. "Evan Brooks? It's Lena." Her voice was carefully professional, but he could hear something else underneath. "Can you come to my office? I need your input on something." His heart kicked up. "Of course! I'll be right there." Lena's office was on the third floor, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Evan had been inside exactly twice in his 4 years at the company. Once during his initial interview, once for a company-wide presentation. It felt surreal to be walking through her door now, knowing what he knew, feeling what he felt. She was standing by the window when he entered, her back to him, silhouetted against the city lights. "Close the door," she said quietly. Evan did, his pulse racing. "What did you need input on?" Lena turned, and the look on her face made his breath catch. "Absolutely nothing. I'm sorry. I just needed to see you, and I couldn't wait until Friday, and I know that's not fair to you, but Lena, it's okay. It's not okay. We agreed to boundaries, to being careful, and here I am, abusing my position to get you alone because I can't stop thinking about you." Evan crossed the office slowly, stopping a careful distance away. "You're not abusing anything. I came here because I wanted to." "Did you?" She searched his face. "Or did you come because I'm your boss and you felt obligated?" "I came because when you called, my first thought was, thank God I get to see her." "Does that answer your question?" Lena closed her eyes. "This is harder than I thought. Seeing you every day and pretending there's nothing between us. Acting like you're just another employee." "I know, but it's only been 4 days. 4 days feels like 4 years." She opened her eyes. "How do you do it? How do you stay so calm?" "I'm not calm," Evan admitted. "I'm hanging on by a thread here. But I also know that if we rush this, if we let it consume us before we've built something real, we'll crash and burn. And I can't let that happen. Because of Mila. Because of all of it. Because I want this to work, Lena. I want it more than I've wanted anything in a long time, which terrifies me. So I'm holding on, staying patient, trusting that what we're building is worth the wait." Lena took a shaky breath. "You're right. I know you're right. What? I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For you to realize this is too complicated and walk away. For something to go wrong." Evan understood that fear intimately. "I'm not going anywhere. But you have to trust me, which means trusting that when I say we need to go slow, I'm not just being cautious, I'm protecting what we're building." She nodded slowly. "Okay, you're right. I'm sorry for calling you up here." "Don't be." He smiled slightly. "Though next time, maybe wait until Friday?" "Next time I'll try." She managed a small laugh. "I'm not used to this. Waiting. Wanting something I can't have immediately." "You can have it. Just not all at once." They stood there in the dimming light, the city sprawling beneath them, and Evan felt the weight of possibility pressing down. It would be so easy to cross that last bit of distance, to pull her close, to give in to the magnetism that seemed to exist between them. So easy and so dangerous. "I should go," he said quietly. "Mila's with the neighbor, and I told her I'd be home by 8. "Of course, thank you for coming up. Even though I had no legitimate reason to ask you." "Any time." He meant it. As Evan turned to leave, Lena's voice stopped him. Evan? Friday. I'm looking forward to it. He looked back. Me too. The week crawled forward with agonizing slowness, but finally, Friday arrived. Evan dropped Mila at another play date, this time at Tommy Richards' house, which Mila had mixed feelings about given the hair glue incident, but his mom was nice and promised they'd make cookies, and headed to Palio at 6:55. Lena was already there, waiting at the same corner table with the same 2 cups of coffee. But this time, when Evan slid into the chair across from her, she was smiling. You look happy, he observed. I am. Do you know why? Tell me. Because I made it through an entire week without doing something stupid. I think I deserve a medal. Evan laughed. I think you deserve more credit than that. It was a long week. The longest. She pushed his coffee across the table. But we're here now. So, where were we? They fell into conversation easily, picking up threads from the week before. Lena told him about the Meridian acquisition negotiations, the careful dance of protecting her employees while considering the company's future. Evan told her about Mila's science project on the water cycle, which had resulted in a kitchen flooded with colored water and cotton balls everywhere. She's getting too big, he said, half to himself. She used to be this tiny thing I could hold in one hand, and now she's building her own experiments and having opinions about everything. That must be terrifying, Lena said gently. It's the best kind of terrifying. But yeah, sometimes I look at her and I panic because I have no idea if I'm doing this right. You're doing it right. How do you know? Because she asked if you were lonely, because she wants you to be happy. That's not something a kid who's being failed does. The certainty in her voice steadied something inside him. They talked for another hour, and this time when Evan left, he squeezed her hand briefly on the way out. A small touch, barely anything, but it felt monumental. The pattern continued over the next few weeks. Friday evenings at Palio became sacred, an hour carved out where they could just be themselves. They talked about everything, childhoods and dreams and fears and failures. Lena admitted she'd wanted children once, before her divorce, before she'd poured everything into the company. Evan admitted he sometimes resented how much he'd given up for Mila, even though he'd never change it. At work they maintained careful distance, but Evan started to notice small changes. Lena smiled more. She seemed lighter, less burdened. People noticed. Whatever's gotten into the boss lately, I like it, Rebecca commented one afternoon. She actually laughed at my joke in the meeting. Lena Whitmore laughed. At my joke. Devin kept his expression neutral. Maybe she's just in a good mood. Maybe. Or maybe she met someone. Rebecca waggled her eyebrows. Wouldn't that be something? It would indeed. 6 weeks into their carefully constructed routine, everything changed on a Wednesday afternoon. Evan was deep in quarterly reconciliations when his phone rang. Not his work line, his personal cell, the number only a handful of people had. Mila's school, the neighbor who watched her sometimes. His brother, though they hadn't spoken in months. The screen showed Bridgewater Elementary. His heart dropped into his stomach. He answered before the second ring. This is Evan Brooks. Mr. Brooks, this is Principal Martinez from Bridgewater. Mila's fine, but we need you to come pick her up. There's been an incident. What kind of incident? Is she hurt? She's not injured, but she's very upset. I'd prefer to discuss this in person. How soon can you get here? Evan was already grabbing his jacket. 15 minutes. He didn't ask permission to leave, didn't stop at anyone's desk to explain, just headed straight for the elevator, his mind racing through possibilities. Mila was fine, the principal had said. But what did that mean? Kids got into fights. They had accidents. The elevator doors opened and Lena stepped out, nearly colliding with him. She took one look at his face and her expression shifted instantly from professional to concerned. Evan, what's wrong? It's Mila. School called. I have to go. Is she okay? I don't know. They said there was an incident. His hands were shaking as he jabbed the elevator button. I have to go. Let me drive you. What? No, Lena, I can't. You're in no state to drive. She grabbed his arm gently but firmly. And before you argue about propriety or what people might think, I don't care. Your daughter needs you. Let me help. Evan wanted to protest, should have protested, But the truth was, his hands were shaking and his mind was spinning, and the thought of navigating traffic while imagining every worst-case scenario made him feel sick. "Okay," he said quietly. "Thank you." They took Lena's car, a sleek silver Mercedes that felt surreal under the circumstances. She drove with calm efficiency, weaving through traffic while Evan stared out the window and tried not to spiral. "She's fine," Lena said quietly. "Whatever happened, she's fine. That's what they told you. Kids aren't fine when the principal calls. That's not how it works. Then we'll deal with whatever it is together." She glanced at him quickly before returning her eyes to the road. "You're not alone in this, Evan." The words lodged somewhere behind his ribs, because that was the thing he'd gotten used to, wasn't it? Being alone. Handling everything himself, not having backup. They made it to Bridgewater in 12 minutes. Evan was out of the car before it fully stopped, Lena right behind him. The front office was familiar territory. He'd been here for parent-teacher conferences, for school events, for a dozen mundane reasons. But walking through those doors with his heart in his throat felt different. "Evan Brooks," he said to the secretary. "Principal Martinez called." "Yes, Mr. Brooks. They're waiting in her office. You can go right back." Evan moved down the hallway on autopilot, Lena keeping pace beside him. He was vaguely aware that bringing his boss to his daughter's school was probably strange, that there would be questions, but none of that mattered. Only Mila mattered. Principal Martinez's door was open. Inside, Evan could see his daughter sitting in one of the visitor chairs, her small body hunched forward, her face blotchy with tears. Mrs. Patterson, her teacher, sat in the other chair. And standing by the window was another woman he didn't recognize, arms crossed, expression hard. "Mr. Brooks." Principal Martinez stood as they entered, her gaze flickering briefly to Lena before returning to Evan. "Thank you for coming so quickly." "What happened?" Evan moved immediately to Mila, crouching beside her chair. "Baby, are you okay?" Mila threw her arms around his neck, and he felt her small body shaking with suppressed sobs. "Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, but she said..." "Shh, it's okay. Just tell me what happened." Principal Martinez cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should all sit down." Evan scooped Mila into his lap as he took her chair, not caring how it looked. Lena positioned herself slightly behind him, a quiet presence of support. The unknown woman remained standing, her jaw tight. "Mr. Brooks, this is Mrs. Richards, Tommy's mother." Recognition clicked. Tommy Richards, the kid who'd put glue in another girl's hair. Tommy Richards, at whose house Mila was supposed to have a playdate last week. "There was an altercation during recess," Principal Martinez continued carefully. "From what we've gathered, Tommy was teasing another student about her clothing." "He was being mean," Mila interrupted, her voice muffled against Evan's shoulder. "He said Chloe's dress was ugly and that she looked poor, and everyone was laughing, and it wasn't fair because Chloe was crying and..." "So your daughter hit my son," Mrs. Richards cut in sharply, pushed him down and punched him in the face. "Tommy has a bloody nose and a bruise on his cheek." Evan's mind stuttered. Mila had hit someone? His gentle, dinosaur-loving daughter who cried when they found injured birds in the park? "Is that true?" he asked quietly, pulling back to look at her face. "Did you hit Tommy?" Mila's chin wobbled. "He was being so mean, Dad, and nobody was stopping him. All the teachers were on the other side of the playground, and he just kept saying terrible things, and Chloe was crying so hard, and I told him to stop, but he wouldn't, so I pushed him, and then..." She trailed off, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I didn't mean to hurt him. I just wanted him to stop." "Well, she did hurt him," Mrs. Richards said coldly, "and I expect consequences. My son is the victim here." Lena moved then, just slightly forward, and though she said nothing, Evan felt her presence like a shield at his back. Mrs. Patterson spoke up for the first time, her voice gentle. "For what it's worth, Tommy has been repeatedly warned about his behavior. The teasing, the glue incident last month, other smaller things. We've addressed it multiple times." "That doesn't excuse violence," Mrs. Richards snapped. "Tommy may have said some unkind words, but he never laid a hand on anyone." "Until he did," Mila said quietly. "You don't know what he does when the teachers aren't looking." "What does that mean?" Evan asked. Mila looked down at her hands. He pushes kids sometimes, on the playground, and he took Chloe's lunch last week and threw it in the trash. And he told Marcus that his dad being in the army meant he'd probably die, and Marcus cried for the whole lunch period. Mrs. Patterson's face tightened. Mila, why didn't you tell us this before? Because Tommy said he'd make it worse if anyone told. He said he'd get everyone in trouble and the teachers would believe him because his mom knows important people. That's preposterous, Mrs. Richards said, but there was something in her tone that rang false. Tommy would never... Mrs. Richards, Principal Martinez interrupted firmly. I think we need to have a separate conversation about Tommy's behavior, but right now we're here to address what happened today. What happened today is that this little girl assaulted my son. What happened today, Lena said quietly, and every head in the room turned toward her, is that a 6-year-old child tried to defend another child who was being bullied. Mrs. Richards' eyes narrowed. And you are a friend of the family. Lena's voice was calm but carried an edge of steel. And while I understand your son was hurt, perhaps we should consider what led to that moment. Repeated bullying, intimidation, creating an environment where other children feel unsafe. Those are serious issues. My son is not a bully. He's spirited. He's cruel, Mila said, her voice small but certain. And everyone's scared of him. The room fell silent. Principal Martinez exchanged a long look with Mrs. Patterson, some unspoken communication passing between them. I think, Principal Martinez said carefully, that we need to take a comprehensive look at the dynamics in Mrs. Patterson's classroom. There are clearly some behavioral issues that need addressing. As for today's incident, Mila will receive 1 day of in-school suspension for the physical altercation. That's non-negotiable. We have a zero-tolerance policy for violence. And Tommy? Evan asked quietly. Tommy will also receive consequences for his behavior, both today and in previous incidents that we were not fully aware of. That's unacceptable, Mrs. Richards said sharply. You're punishing my son for being the victim. I'm addressing a pattern of behavior that has created an unsafe environment for other students. Principal Martinez stood, her expression brooking no argument. Mrs. Richards, I'd like you to come back tomorrow with your husband so we can discuss Tommy's actions in detail. For now, I think it's best if you pick him up from the nurse's office and take him home. Mrs. Richards looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Principal Martinez's expression stopped her. She shot Evan a venomous look, then turned and stalked out. The door closed behind her with a sharp click. Principal Martinez sighed. Mr. Brooks, I apologize. This situation has clearly been building for some time, and we should have caught it earlier. Will Mila really have to serve suspension? Evan asked, his arms tightening around his daughter. I'm afraid so. The policy exists for good reason, even when the circumstances are complicated. However, it will be in-school suspension, which means she'll be in a separate room doing her regular work. It won't go on any permanent record. Evan nodded slowly. He understood rules. He understood consequences. But looking at his daughter's tear-stained face, knowing she'd been trying to protect another child, made his chest ache. Can I take her home now? Yes. We'll see her tomorrow morning. Mila, I want you to know that standing up for your friend was brave. But next time, the right thing to do is find a teacher immediately. We're here to help. You don't have to handle these situations yourself. Mila nodded against Evan's shoulder. They walked back through the school in silence. Mila's hand clutched in Evan's. Lena walked beside them, saying nothing but somehow saying everything just by being there. When they reached the car, Evan started to guide Mila toward the back seat, but she stopped. Who's she? Mila asked, looking at Lena for the first time. Evan's mind went blank. This wasn't how this was supposed to happen. Not like this. Not under these circumstances. Not when everything was raw and complicated. Lena knelt down to Mila's level, her expression gentle. My name is Lana. I work with your dad. He was worried about you and I offered to drive so he could focus on making sure you were okay. Mila studied her with the serious intensity only children could manage. You're pretty. A surprised laugh escaped Lena. Thank you. You're pretty too, and very brave, from what I hear. I hit someone. That's not brave. That's bad. You were trying to protect your friend, Lena said gently. The hitting part wasn't the right choice, but the wanting to help part? That was brave. Mila considered this, then looked at Evan. Is Lena your friend? Yes, Evan said quietly. She's my friend. Good. You need more friends. Mila climbed into the back seat, apparently satisfied with this explanation. Evan met Lena's eyes over the roof of the car. She gave him a small smile that said everything would be okay, that this unexpected collision of his two worlds hadn't ruined anything. The drive back to Evan's apartment was quiet. Mila stared out the window, exhausted from crying and emotion. Lena navigated the streets with the same calm efficiency, while Evan sat in the passenger seat trying to process everything that had just happened. When they pulled up outside his building, Lena put the car in park but didn't turn off the engine. Do you want me to come up? She asked quietly. Or would you prefer... Come up, Evan said. Please. They made their way upstairs, Mila dragging her backpack, Evan carrying the weight of the afternoon, Lena following with careful steps. Inside the apartment, Mila immediately went to her room without being asked, closing the door softly behind her. Evan stood in the living room, feeling unmoored. I'm sorry, that wasn't how... I didn't plan for you to meet her like that. Evan, stop. Lena took his hands. Your daughter needed you. That's all that matters. She hit someone. My 6-year-old daughter punched another kid. Because he was bullying someone she cared about. Because she's been watching him terrorize other children and felt helpless. Because she's 6 and didn't know what else to do. Lena squeezed his hands. She's not violent, Evan. She's protective. There's a difference. I need to talk to her, figure out how to handle this. I know. And I should go so you can do that. But Evan didn't let go of her hands. Thank you for driving, for being there, for saying what you said to Mrs. Richards. That woman is a nightmare, Lena said bluntly. And her son is a bully because she's taught him he can get away with anything. I've dealt with enough Richard Caldwells and Tommy Richards in my life to recognize the type. Despite everything, Evan almost smiled. You were very diplomatic. I was professional. Diplomatic would have been letting her continue blaming a 6-year-old for defending her friend. Lena's expression softened. Go talk to Mila. I'll let myself out. Lena. She kissed his cheek, quick and gentle. It's okay. We're okay. Call me later if you need to talk. After she left, Evan stood in the quiet apartment for a long moment, steadying himself. Then he went to Mila's room and knocked softly on the door. Can I come in? Yeah. She was sitting on her bed, still in her school clothes, her favorite stuffed triceratops clutched in her arms. Evan sat beside her, the mattress dipping under his weight. Do you want to talk about it? He asked gently. Are you mad at me? No, I'm not mad. He pulled her close. I'm sad that you felt like you had to handle that situation yourself. And I'm worried that you've been dealing with Tommy's behavior and didn't feel like you could tell anyone. He said he'd make it worse. Bullies always say that. But you know what? They can't make it worse if adults know what's happening. The principal and Mrs. Patterson are going to make sure Tommy doesn't hurt anyone else. Mila was quiet for a moment. Dad, was hitting him really wrong, even if he was being mean? This was the moment. The teaching moment that would shape how she understood conflict and justice and standing up for others. Evan chose his words carefully. Hitting is wrong because there are better ways to handle problems. You could have found a teacher. You could have helped Chloe walk away. There were other choices. He tilted her chin up so she'd look at him. But I also understand why you did it. When someone we love is hurting, we want to make it stop. That instinct, that desire to protect people. That's good. It's the method that needs work. So I should have found a teacher. Every single time. That's what they're there for. Okay. She snuggled closer to him. Dad, why was that lady with you? Evan's heart rate kicked up. Lena, she's my friend. Like I told you. Is she a special friend? Like we talked about? He could lie, could deflect, but he'd promised himself he'd always be honest with Mila about important things. She might be, he said carefully. We're getting to know each other, but it's very new, and I wanted to make sure I talked to you about it before anything changed. I like her, Mila announced. She has nice eyes, and she said I was brave even though I got in trouble. She's right. You were brave, just maybe a little misguided. What's misguided mean? It means your heart was in the right place, but your choices could have been better. Mila processed this, her young mind working through complex ideas. If Lena becomes your special friend, will she come over sometimes? Would you want her to? Maybe, as long as she's nice to you. You deserve nice people, Dad. The wisdom of 6-year-olds never ceased to amaze him. Thanks, kiddo. You deserve nice people too, which is why we're not going to let Tommy Richards make you feel bad anymore. They spent the rest of the evening together, Mila helping make dinner like always, chattering about her science project and everything except the incident at school. After dinner, bath time, and the usual bedtime routine, Evan tucked her in with an extra story. Dad, she said sleepily as he turned off the light. Yeah? I'm sorry I hit Tommy, but I'm not sorry I tried to help Chloe. I know, baby. Get some sleep. Once her breathing evened out, Evan retreated to his own room and pulled out his phone. He had 3 texts from Lena. I hope Mila's okay, and that you're okay. Call me if you need anything, even if it's just to talk. He hit the call button. She answered on the first ring. Hey, she said softly. How is she? Surprisingly okay, all things considered. We talked about better ways to handle conflict, and she seems to understand. He paused. She asked if you were a special friend. Silence on the other end, then, what did you tell her? The truth. That we're getting to know each other. That it's new. She said she likes you. She barely met me. She said you have nice eyes, and that I deserve nice people. Evan smiled despite the exhaustion. Apparently I have my daughter's blessing. Evan, Lena's voice was thick with emotion. I wasn't trying to meet her like that. I didn't want to push my way into it. You didn't push. You were there when I needed help, and you treated her with kindness and respect. That's all that matters. Where does this leave us? Evan thought about Mila's question, about the door that had opened today that he hadn't planned to open yet, about how Lena had knelt down to his daughter's level and spoken to her like a person, not a child to be placated, about how natural it had felt having her there, even in crisis. I think, he said slowly, that maybe we don't have to be quite as careful anymore. Mila knows you exist now. She's curious, and I trust her instincts about people. So what do we do? Maybe you could come to dinner sometime, just as my friend. Let them get to know each other naturally. I'd like that, a lot. They talked for another hour, Lena telling him about how the Meridian acquisition was progressing, Evan sharing more stories about Mila's childhood. Easy conversation between two people learning to fit into each other's lives. When they finally said goodnight, Evan lay in the dark and thought about how much had changed in one afternoon. The careful walls he'd built, the slow progression he'd planned, all of it had been upended by a phone call from school, but somehow it felt right, like the universe had decided they'd been careful enough. The next morning, Evan dropped Mila off for her in-school suspension. She hugged him extra tight before going in. It's just one day, he reminded her, and then everything goes back to normal. Will Lena be at our house when I get home? Not today, but maybe soon. Okay, love you, Dad. Love you too, kiddo. At work, Evan threw himself into catching up on what he'd missed the day before. Around 10, his desk phone rang. Internal line, Lena's office. Evan Brooks, can you come see me? Lena's voice was professional, but he could hear the smile in it. I actually do need your input on something this time. I'll be right there. When he entered her office, she was standing by the window again, but this time she turned immediately, her face bright. How is she? Good. Dropped her off this morning without any drama. I think she'll be fine. And you? I'm okay. Tired, but okay. Lena moved closer, stopping just within reach. I've been thinking about what you said last night, about dinner. Yeah? How about Friday? I could bring something, or we could order in, whatever makes Mila comfortable. Pizza, Evan said immediately. Order pizza, and she'll love you forever. Pizza I can do. Lena's smile was radiant. Evan, I know this is happening faster than we planned, but it feels right. Does it feel right to you? He reached out and took her hand right there in her office where anyone could walk in, where the careful boundaries they'd maintained were completely visible. Yeah, it feels right. Good. She squeezed his hand. Because I'm tired of pretending at work that you're just another employee. I'm tired of waiting until Friday to talk to you. I'm tired of being careful when what I want to do is be reckless. Lena, I know we still need to be professional. I know there are policies and appearances and all of that. But maybe we can be a little less careful. Maybe we can have lunch together sometimes. Maybe I can call you into my office just because I want to see you and not feel guilty about it. Evan pulled her closer until they were standing the way they'd stood that night in his living room, connected by touch and possibility. We can do that, as long as you remember that I need to leave at 5 every day. No exceptions. For Mila, I know. She looked up at him. That's not going to change, is it? You're always going to choose her first. Every single time, he confirmed. Good. Lena's eyes shone. Because a man who doesn't put his daughter first isn't someone I want to be with. The word hung there between them. With. Not seeing, not dating. With. As in together. As in committed. As in real. Is that what we're doing? Evan asked softly. Being with each other? I'd like to be. If you would. I would. He touched her face gently. I really, really would. For a moment, Evan thought she might kiss him, wanted her to, but instead Lena stepped back, creating professional distance again, her expression shifting into something more appropriate for the workplace. Then I'll see you Friday night, she said. 6 o'clock? Pizza and getting to know your daughter properly? Perfect. As Evan left her office and made his way back to his desk, he felt something settle in his chest, something that felt like rightness, like the pieces of his life. The ones he'd kept so carefully separated were finally starting to come together. Friday arrived with a mix of excitement and anxiety. Evan spent the afternoon tidying the apartment, which was already clean, and then tidying it again. Mila watched him with amusement. Dad, you're being weird again. I'm not being weird. I'm making sure the house looks nice. Why? Lena already saw it. She was here on Wednesday. That was different. That was an emergency. This is... He trailed off, realizing he was explaining dinner to his 6-year-old. This is intentional. It's just pizza, Mila pointed out. You don't need to clean the whole house for pizza. She had a point, but Evan couldn't help himself. This mattered. Tonight mattered. At 5:58, there was a knock on the door. Evan took a breath and opened it. Lena stood there in jeans and a soft sweater, her hair down around her shoulders, looking nothing like the CEO and everything like someone who belonged in his life. She held 2 pizza boxes and a bag that smelled like garlic bread. Hi, she said, suddenly shy. Hi. Evan stepped back to let her in. You didn't have to bring so much food. I didn't know what kind of pizza Mila liked, so I got 3 different kinds. And breadsticks, and... She peered into the bag. Apparently the guy at the pizza place talked me into ordering way too much food. Mila appeared at Evan's elbow, peering up at Lena with open curiosity. Hi, Lena. Do you have dinosaur pizza? Lena blinked. Is that a real thing? No, Mila said sadly. But it should be. I got pepperoni, cheese, and one with vegetables. Will that work? I like pepperoni. Dad makes me eat vegetables, but I don't love them. That's fair, Lena said seriously. Vegetables are important, but not always exciting. Mila grinned, apparently satisfied with this answer. Do you want to see my room? I have a T-Rex and a Triceratops and a whole collection. I would love to see your room, Lena said, and the genuine interest in her voice made Evan's chest warm. Mila grabbed Lena's free hand and tugged her toward the bedroom, chattering about fossils and the Cretaceous period. Evan followed, carrying the pizza boxes, and watched as Lena knelt down to examine Mila's dinosaur collection with the same serious attention she probably gave board presentations. This is an excellent collection, Lena declared. Do you have a favorite? The Triceratops, because she's a plant eater, but she has horns to protect herself. She doesn't have to be mean to be strong. Lena met Evan's eyes over Mila's head, and he saw understanding flicker there. A 6-year-old's philosophy, learned from dinosaurs and probably shaped by Wednesday's incident. That's very wise, Lena said gently. You don't have to be mean to be strong. I like that. They ate dinner at the small table, Mila monopolizing the conversation with questions about Lena's job, her apartment, whether she liked dinosaurs as much as Mila did. Lena answered each question with patience and humor, never talking down to her, never dismissing her curiosity. Watching them together, Evan felt something loosen in his chest, something he'd been holding tight for 6 years, maybe longer. The fear that his life was too full, that there wasn't room for another person, that choosing someone for himself meant taking away from Mila. But here was Lena, asking his daughter about her science project and laughing at her jokes about Tommy Richards being a human mosquito, and Mila was glowing with attention. This wasn't taking anything away. This was adding something they'd both been missing without knowing it. After dinner, while Evan cleaned up, Lena and Mila settled on the couch with one of Mila's dinosaur books. He could hear them from the kitchen, Lena reading in different voices while Mila giggled and corrected her pronunciation. "It's paleontologist," Mila said carefully. "Not paleontologist." "Paleontologist," Lena repeated. "Got it. These are complicated words. Dad says if I want to be a paleontologist when I grow up, I have to learn the hard words now." "Your dad is very smart." "I know. He's the best dad ever." "Are you going to be his girlfriend?" Evan nearly dropped the plate he was holding. He moved to the kitchen doorway, ready to intervene, but Lena caught his eye and gave a tiny shake of her head. "Would that be okay with you?" Lena asked Mila carefully. "If I was?" Mila thought about it with the gravity of someone deciding world peace. "Do you promise to be nice to him?" "I promise." "And you won't leave like my mom did?" The question hung in the air, devastating in its simplicity. Evan's throat closed. He'd thought Mila didn't remember her mother leaving. She'd been so young. But clearly, she remembered enough. Or maybe she'd just absorbed the fear of abandonment through osmosis, the way children absorbed everything. Lena's expression softened. "Mila, I can't promise that things won't be complicated sometimes. Adults mess up, we get scared, we make mistakes. But I can promise that if your dad and I are together, I will try my very hardest to be someone you can count on. And if I ever can't be, I'll be honest about it. I won't just disappear." Mila studied her for a long moment. "Okay, you can be his girlfriend then, but only if you promise to keep being nice." "I promise," Lena said solemnly. Later that night, after Mila had gone to bed with minimal protest and extra hugs for both Evan and Lena, they sat together on the couch in the dim light of the living room. Evan had poured them each a glass of wine, and Lena had kicked off her shoes, tucking her feet underneath her in a way that felt startlingly domestic. "That was intense," Lena said quietly, swirling the wine in her glass. "The question about leaving, I wasn't prepared for that." "You handled it perfectly." Evan reached for her hand. "Better than perfectly. You were honest with her without making promises you can't keep. That's exactly what she needed to hear." "I meant what I said, though. About trying. About being someone she can count on." Lena's fingers tightened around his. "Evan, I need you to understand something. I know this is moving fast. I know we're bypassing all the normal stages of dating where you keep your kids separate until you're sure it's serious. But the truth is, I am sure. I've been sure since that night I showed up at your door. Maybe even before that." Evan's heart hammered against his ribs. "Lena, I'm not asking you to feel the same way," she continued quickly. "I know you need more time. I know you need to see how I am with Mila, how we all fit together. I'm just saying that from where I'm sitting, this isn't a maybe anymore. This is real." The vulnerability in her voice undid something inside him. Here was this woman who commanded boardrooms and negotiated million-dollar deals, laying herself bare in his living room, trusting him with her certainty when certainty was the scariest thing either of them could offer. "It's real for me too," he said quietly. "I'm terrified of it, but it's real." Lena leaned closer, and this time when she kissed him, there was nothing tentative about it. It was a kiss that tasted like relief and promise, and 6 weeks of restraint finally breaking. Evan pulled her closer, his hand tangling in her hair, and felt the world narrow to this moment, this woman, this impossible thing that was somehow happening. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lena rested her forehead against his. "I should probably go," she whispered, "before I forget that we're trying to be responsible about this." "Probably." But Evan didn't let go. Stay for a few more minutes. They stayed like that, wrapped around each other on his second-hand couch, talking in quiet voices about everything and nothing. Lena told him about her day, about the Meridian negotiations hitting a snag over employee benefits. Evan told her about Mila's suspension day, how she'd come home with a certificate from the principal for completing her work ahead of schedule. "She's remarkable," Lena said. "You've raised someone truly special, Evan." "I've tried. Most days I feel like I'm making it up as I go." "That's what good parents do. The bad ones think they have all the answers." She paused. "I never thought I'd have this, the chance to be part of someone's family. After my divorce, I convinced myself that ship had sailed, that I'd chosen my career and I needed to be okay with what that meant." "What did it mean?" "Being alone. Being successful and respected and completely, devastatingly alone." Her voice cracked slightly. "And then I met you, and suddenly alone felt like a choice I didn't have to keep making." Evan kissed her forehead. "You're not alone anymore." "Neither are you." It was close to 11 when Lena finally left, both of them reluctant to separate but knowing they needed to. Evan walked her to the door, stealing one more kiss before she stepped into the hallway. "I'll see you Monday?" she asked. "You'll see me Monday, and probably before that if you want to text me this weekend." "I definitely want to text you this weekend," she smiled. "Good night, Evan." "Good night, Lena." He watched until the elevator doors closed behind her, then returned to his apartment, which somehow felt both emptier and fuller than before. The scent of her perfume lingered on the couch cushions. 2 wine glasses sat on the coffee table, evidence of a night that had shifted everything. The weekend passed in a blur of normalcy punctuated by text messages that made Evan smile at unexpected moments. Lena sent him a picture of a dinosaur-shaped cookie she'd found at a bakery with the caption, "Thought of Mila." He responded with a video of Mila doing a dramatic reenactment of the T-Rex versus Triceratops battle from her favorite book. On Sunday morning, Lena called just to hear his voice, and they talked for an hour while he made breakfast, and she pretended to read the newspaper. Monday morning brought the inevitable shift back to work reality, but it felt different now. When Evan arrived at the office, there was a coffee waiting on his desk, black with 1 sugar, and a note in Lena's handwriting that said simply, "Good morning." Rebecca noticed immediately. "Someone's in a good mood. Did you have a nice weekend?" "Very nice," Evan admitted, unable to stop the smile. "Well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You look happy." He was happy. Terrifyingly, vulnerably happy in a way he hadn't been in years. The week unfolded with a new rhythm. Lena and Evan maintained professional boundaries at work, but there were small moments, passing in the hallway and letting their fingers brush, exchanging glances during meetings, Lena calling him to her office for legitimate work questions that somehow always ended with 5 extra minutes of conversation that had nothing to do with spreadsheets. Wednesday afternoon, Rebecca cornered him by the coffee machine. "Okay, spill," she said, lowering her voice. "What's going on with you and the boss?" Evan's heart stuttered. "What do you mean?" "Oh, please. I've worked here for 12 years. I know when something's different. She's been smiling more. You've been smiling more. And last week when you had that emergency with your daughter, she left right after you did. Her car wasn't in the lot all afternoon." There was no judgment in Rebecca's voice, just curiosity and maybe a little concern. Evan weighed his options and decided on honesty. "We're seeing each other," he admitted quietly. "It's new. We're being careful." Rebecca's eyes widened. "Evan Brooks and Lena Whitmore. I did not see that coming. Is it going to be a problem?" "Are you kidding? This is the best office gossip we've had in years." She paused, her expression softening. "But seriously, good for you. You deserve someone who makes you happy. And between you and me, Lena's been different lately. Lighter. That's because of you. Please don't tell anyone. We're not trying to hide it exactly, but we're also not ready for it to be public knowledge. Your secret's safe with me. But Evan, people are going to figure it out eventually. You both light up when you're in the same room. It's kind of obvious." She was probably right, but for now, Evan was content with their careful balance, this in-between space where they could explore what they were becoming without the pressure of everyone watching. Thursday night, Lena came over for dinner again. This time, Evan cooked, Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and salad. But Mila insisted on helping set the table with her fancy plates that had dinosaurs on them. These are beautiful plates, Lena said seriously. Are they for special occasions? They're for when we have company, Mila explained. Dad said you count as company. I'm honored. Over dinner, Mila regaled Lena with stories from school, including a detailed account of how Tommy Richards had apologized to Chloe in front of the whole class. Mrs. Patterson made him, Mila clarified, and his mom was there watching. She looked really mad, but Tommy said the words right. He said he was sorry for being mean and that he'd try to be better. That's good, Evan said. How did Chloe react? She said thank you, but she's still scared of him. I told her I'd keep watching out for her, but that we should tell teachers if he's mean again instead of pushing him. That's very mature of you, sweetheart. I'm learning, Mila said solemnly. Dad says we all make mistakes, and the important part is learning from them. After dinner, while Evan cleaned the kitchen, Lena helped Mila with her math homework. He could hear them from the other room, Lena's patient voice explaining addition in a way that made sense. Mila's occasional, "Oh, I get it now." This was becoming a pattern, Evan realized. Lena fitting into their lives so seamlessly, it felt like she'd always been there. It should have scared him, this rapid integration, this blurring of boundaries. But instead, it felt inevitable, like pieces finally clicking into place. Later, after Mila was asleep, Evan and Lena sat on the couch again, but this time he pulled her fully against him, her back to his chest, his arms around her waist. I could get used to this, Lena murmured. Good, because I'm planning on keeping you around. She turned in his arms to face him. Evan, we should probably talk about work, about how we're going to handle this when people find out. Rebecca knows. She figured it out. Lena stiffened slightly. What did she say? That we're obvious because we light up around each other, and that she's happy for us. That's one person. What about when everyone knows? There are going to be questions, accusations of favoritism. People wondering if you got your job because of me, even though you were here years before we started seeing each other. I know. Evan had been thinking about this too. We'll need to be transparent. Maybe talk to HR, make sure everything's documented properly. I don't want anyone thinking I'm getting special treatment. You won't be. I'd never compromise your position like that. She paused. But there's something else we need to consider, the Meridian acquisition. If it goes through, everything changes. There will be new leadership structures, new policies. This could get even more complicated. Are you having second thoughts? No. Her answer was immediate and certain. I'm just trying to think ahead, to protect both of us. Then we'll figure it out together. Whatever comes, we handle it together. Lena kissed him softly. Together. I like the sound of that. The next Friday, Evan got a call from Principal Martinez asking if he could come in for a meeting. His stomach dropped immediately. Was there another incident with Mila? But the principal assured him it was nothing bad. Actually, it's quite positive, she said. We'd just like to discuss something with you. Evan arranged to take a long lunch and headed to the school, his mind racing through possibilities. When he arrived, he was surprised to find not just Principal Martinez, but also Mrs. Patterson and the school counselor, Ms. Chen. Mr. Brooks, thank you for coming, Principal Martinez began. We wanted to talk to you about Mila. Is everything okay? Everything is more than okay. We've been observing her since the incident with Tommy, and we've noticed something remarkable. She's become something of a leader in her class. Other children come to her when they have problems. She's been helping mediate conflicts on the playground. Just yesterday, she stopped 2 kids from fighting by suggesting they play a game together instead. Mrs. Patterson nodded enthusiastically. She has an exceptional emotional intelligence for her age. The way she reads social situations, the empathy she shows other students, it's quite unusual. We'd like to recommend her for our peer mediation program, Ms. Chen added. It's typically for 3rd through 5th graders, but we think Mila would benefit from the training, and the program would benefit from having her perspective. Evan felt pride swell in his chest. What would that involve? Training sessions twice a week during lunch recess, learning conflict resolution skills, communication techniques, that sort of thing. Then she'd be paired with an older student to help mediate minor disputes among her peers. Principal Martinez smiled. We think she has a real gift for this, Mr. Brooks. The incident with Tommy, while unfortunate in method, showed us that Mila has a strong sense of justice and a desire to help others. We want to channel that into something positive. I think she'd love that, Evan said honestly. Can I discuss it with her first? Of course. Let us know by next week if she's interested. That evening, Evan told Mila about the program over dinner. Her eyes grew wide with excitement. I get to help kids solve problems? Like a superhero but with words? Exactly like that. Yes, I want to do it. Can I start tomorrow? We have to let them know first, but yes, you can start soon. Mila bounced in her seat. Wait until I tell Lena. The casual way she said it, the assumption that Lena would want to know, that Lena was someone worth telling, made Evan's throat tight. His daughter had accepted Lena into their lives completely, naturally, as if she'd been waiting for her. Later that night, after Mila was asleep, Evan called Lena to tell her about the meeting. That's incredible, Lena said, her voice warm with genuine pride. She's going to be amazing at that. She wants to tell you herself. She's very excited. I'm excited too. Evan, she's such a special kid. You should be so proud. I am. Every single day. He paused. She's accepted you so easily, Lena. Sometimes I worry it's too easy, that she's going to get hurt if things don't work out between us. Then we make sure things work out, Lena said simply. I'm not planning on going anywhere, Evan. Are you? No, but life happens. Things change. I just want to protect her. I know you do, and I love that about you. But maybe part of protecting her is showing her that it's okay to take chances on people, that not everyone leaves. She was right. He knew she was right, but the fear lingered anyway, the ghost of his ex-wife's abandonment coloring everything. The following Monday brought unexpected news. Lena called an emergency board meeting, and rumors flew through the office. By lunch, everyone knew Meridian had made their final offer. Lena had 24 hours to decide whether to accept or walk away. Evan found her in her office at 6 that evening, standing by the window as always, silhouetted against the city lights. Lena? She turned and he saw the weight of the decision in her eyes. Hey, you should have gone home to Mila. I texted the neighbor. She's fine for another hour. He closed the door behind him. Talk to me. What's going on? Lena sank into her desk chair, suddenly looking exhausted. The offer is good, Evan. Better than good. It would secure the company's future, protect everyone's jobs, provide better benefits and resources. From a business standpoint, it's the right decision. But I built this company from nothing, 12 years of my life. And if I sell, I'll stay on as a consultant for a year, maybe 2. But then what? I'll be 45 years old with more money than I'll ever need and no purpose. Evan pulled up a chair beside her desk. Is that what this company is to you? Your purpose? It was. For a long time, it was everything. She met his eyes. But lately, I've been wondering if I've been holding on to it so tightly because I was afraid of what would happen if I let go. Afraid of the empty space it would leave. And now? Now I have you and Mila. And for the first time, I can imagine a life that isn't centered around quarterly earnings and board meetings and being Lena Whitmore, CEO. She laughed shakily. That should terrify me. Instead, it feels like relief. So what are you going to do? I don't know. The board wants me to accept. My financial advisors are practically begging me to accept. It's the smart move. She paused. What do you think I should do? I think you should do what makes you happy, Evan said carefully. Not what's smart or logical or what everyone else wants. What do you want, Lena? She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I want to wake up on a Saturday morning without checking my email. I want to have dinner with you and Mila without worrying about quarterly reports. I want to figure out who I am when I'm not CEO of anything. But I'm scared, Evan. This company is all I've known for over a decade. What if I sell it and then realize I've made a terrible mistake? Then you'll figure it out. People reinvent themselves all the time. He reached for her hand. Lena, you're brilliant and capable, and you could do anything you set your mind to. This doesn't have to be the end of something. It could be the beginning. The beginning of what? Of whatever you want. Maybe you start a new company in a few years. Maybe you do consulting work on your own terms. Maybe you take a year off and figure out what actually makes you happy. The point is, you'd have choices. You'd have freedom. Lena squeezed his hand. When did you become so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just a guy who learned the hard way that jobs and titles aren't what matter at the end of the day. People matter. Relationships matter. Everything else is just structure. She stood up and moved around the desk, pulling him up with her. If I do this, if I sell the company, everything changes. The power dynamic between us disappears. I wouldn't be your boss anymore. Is that what you're worried about? That if you're not my boss, we won't have a reason to be together? No. I'm worried that you're with me partly because I'm powerful and impressive. And if I'm not those things anymore, you'll realize I'm just ordinary. Evan cupped her face in his hands. Lena, I fell for you when you showed up at my door at 4 a.m. with mascara running down your face. When you were vulnerable and lost and completely human. The CEO part? That's impressive, sure, but it's not why I'm here. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm going to accept the offer. Yeah? Yeah, it's time. I'm ready to let go. She laughed through her tears. I'm terrified, but I'm ready. Then I'm proud of you. Stay with me tonight, she said suddenly. Not in a romantic way, just stay. Help me draft the acceptance email. Be here while I take this leap. Evan thought about Mila, about his responsibility to be home, but he'd already arranged for the neighbor to keep her overnight if needed. He'd been worried about Lena and wanted to be prepared. Okay, he said quietly. I'll stay. They spent the next 3 hours crafting the email to Meridian's executive team and the board. Lena wrote and rewrote, Evan reading over her shoulder and offering suggestions. Finally, at 9:47 p.m., she hovered her finger over the send button. This is it, she whispered. No going back after this. You don't have to do it tonight. You have until tomorrow. No, if I wait, I'll talk myself out of it. She took a breath. Okay, here goes everything. She hit send. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Lena started laughing, not hysterical laughter, but the kind that came from release, from having carried something heavy for so long and finally setting it down. I did it, she said, turning to Evan with wonder in her eyes. I actually did it. You did it. He pulled her close. How do you feel? Lighter, terrified, free. She buried her face in his chest. Hold me for a minute. I think I need to fall apart a little bit. So he held her while she cried, while she laughed, while she processed the magnitude of what she'd just done. And when she finally pulled back, her eyes were clear and bright. What happens now? She asked. Now we go home. Well, I go home to Mila. You go home to your apartment. Tomorrow, you go to work and tell the board what you've decided. And then we figure out the rest as it comes. Can I see you this weekend? Both of you? Of course, Mila's been asking when you're coming over again. I've been asking myself the same question. Lena smiled. Lena, Evan, thank you for being here, for helping me see clearly. That's what I'm here for. They left the office together, and for the first time, Evan didn't worry about who might see them. Lena had just sold her company. In a few months, she wouldn't be his boss at all. The careful walls they'd built were coming down, piece by piece. In the parking garage, Lena kissed him goodbye. A real kiss, deep and full of promise. I'll see you Saturday? Saturday. We'll do something fun with Mila. Maybe the zoo? The zoo sounds perfect. Evan drove home with his mind spinning, processing everything that had happened. Lena had sold her company. The power dynamic was shifting. Their relationship was becoming real in a way that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. When he got home, the neighbor reported that Mila had gone to bed without any issues. Evan checked on his daughter, watched her sleep for a moment, and felt gratitude wash over him. This life he'd built, it was good. It was enough. And now it was expanding to include someone else, someone who made both of them happier. Saturday arrived bright and clear, perfect zoo weather. Lena picked them up at 10, and Mila practically vibrated with excitement during the whole drive. Can we see the elephants first, and then the big cats? Oh, and the reptile house. Did you know some dinosaurs are related to modern reptiles? It's true. I believe you, Lena said, smiling at her in the rearview mirror. We can see everything you want to see. The zoo was crowded, families everywhere, but they found their own rhythm. Mila darted between exhibits, reading every placard, asking 1,000 questions. Lena answered what she could and admitted freely when she didn't know something. Evan watched them together, his daughter and this woman who'd unexpectedly become central to both their lives, and felt something settle deep in his chest. This was what happiness looked like. Not dramatic, not perfect, just real. At the elephant exhibit, Mila tugged on Lena's hand. Can you lift me up? I can't see. Without hesitation, Lena picked her up, settling Mila on her hip like she'd done it 100 times before. Mila wrapped one arm around Lena's neck, pointing excitedly at the elephants with the other hand. Evan pulled out his phone and snapped a picture. Mila's profile, laughing at something the elephant did. Lena's face soft with affection as she watched her. He'd treasure that photo forever. At lunch, they found a quiet spot under a tree. Mila demolished her chicken nuggets while telling them about the peer mediation training she'd started. We learned about active listening, she explained seriously. That's when you really pay attention to what someone's saying, not just wait for your turn to talk. And we learned about finding compromises, which is when both people give up a little bit of what they want so everyone can be happy. That's very wise, Lena said. Those are skills that adults should use more too. Yeah, Mrs. Chen said that. She said if grown-ups were better at active listening and compromises, there'd be fewer wars. Mila took a sip of her juice box. Are you guys good at compromises? Evan and Lena exchanged a glance. We're learning, Evan said carefully. Good, because I think you should keep being together. You make each other smile a lot. Later, after they'd seen every exhibit at least once, and Mila's energy was finally flagging, they drove back to Evan's apartment. Mila fell asleep in the car, and Evan carried her inside while Lena followed with her backpack. She had a good day, Lena said softly as Evan tucked Mila into bed, not even bothering with pajamas since she was so deeply asleep. The best day. He closed Mila's door quietly and turned to find Lena watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. What? Nothing, just this, us. I keep waiting to wake up and discover it was all a dream. It's not a dream. Evan pulled her close, right there in his hallway with his daughter sleeping 10 feet away and sunshine streaming through the windows. It's real. We're real. We are, aren't we? She sounded amazed by it. Evan Brooks and Lena Whitmore. Who would have thought? Apparently Mila thought. She's been advocating for us from the beginning. Lena laughed softly. Smartest 6-year-old I've ever met. They moved to the living room, settling into what had become their spot on the couch. Lena told him about the board meeting, how they'd accepted her decision with mixed emotions but ultimate support. The transition would take 6 months, maybe longer. There would be paperwork and negotiations and 100 details to sort through. But after that, she said, after that I'm free, truly free for the first time in my adult life. What will you do with all that freedom? I have some ideas. She traced patterns on his arm. There's a nonprofit in Seattle that works with young entrepreneurs, especially women trying to start businesses. They've been asking me to join their board for years. I always said I was too busy, but maybe now. That sounds perfect for you. And I'd still be here in Portland, still be near you and Mila. I could actually have time for a life outside of work. She paused. Is it crazy that I'm more excited about that than nervous? Not crazy at all. It's called growth. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, just being together. Eventually, Lena stirred. I should go. Let you have your evening with Mila. Stay for dinner, Evan offered. I'm just making spaghetti again, but I'd love to stay for dinner. So she stayed, and when Mila woke up from her nap, groggy and confused about why she was still in her zoo clothes, they all made dinner together. Mila stood on a stool to help stir the sauce. Lena set the table without being asked, remembering where everything went. Evan watched them move around his small kitchen and thought, this is it. This is everything. After dinner, after dishes, after Mila's bath and bedtime routine, Lena finally left close to 9. At the door, she hesitated. Evan, can I ask you something? Anything. Where's this going? Us, I mean. Because from where I'm standing, it feels like we're building towards something permanent. But I need to know if you feel that too, or if I'm getting ahead of myself. Evan thought about hedging, about being careful with his answer, but careful had never been what Lena needed from him. I feel it too, he admitted. I'm terrified of it, but I feel it. This thing between us, it's not casual. It hasn't been from the start. So what do we do about it? We keep doing what we're doing. We keep showing up for each other. We keep building this piece by piece until it's something solid enough to last. He touched her face gently. I can't promise forever, Lena. Nobody can. But I can promise that I'm all in. For however long this lasts, I'm completely, terrifyingly all in. Her smile was radiant. That's all I needed to hear. She kissed him goodnight, and Evan watched her go, already counting the hours until he'd see her again. The months that followed moved like a river finding its course, sometimes rushing, sometimes meandering, but always flowing forward. The Meridian acquisition progressed through its complex machinery of lawyers and contracts and due diligence. Lena remained CEO through the transition, but her days grew incrementally lighter as responsibilities shifted to the incoming leadership team. At work, the truth about Evan and Lena's relationship emerged gradually, like dawn breaking. Rebecca had known first, of course, but others began to notice the way Lena's face softened when Evan entered a room, the way he'd bring her coffee without being asked, the way they'd leave together sometimes on Friday evenings. There were whispers, naturally. Some people raised eyebrows. But mostly, the reaction was supportive, even pleased. Lena had always been respected but rarely liked, too distant, too focused, too much the untouchable CEO. Seeing her happy made her human in a way that nothing else could have. HR was informed officially in late November. Evan sat through an uncomfortable meeting where he had to explain the timeline, assure them there had been no favoritism, sign documents acknowledging potential conflicts of interest. But by then, Lena's departure was already scheduled for February, so the issue had a built-in expiration date. 4 more months, she told Evan that evening over dinner at her apartment. It was the first time he'd been there, a stunning space with floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive furniture that somehow felt cold despite its elegance. 4 more months and I'll be officially unemployed for the first time since college. Technically, you'll be consulting, Evan pointed out, for 6 months on a very part-time basis. It's basically retirement. She laughed, but there was nervousness underneath. What if I hate it? What if I'm terrible at having free time? Then you'll figure out something else to do. But I have a feeling you're going to surprise yourself. Mila had stayed with the neighbor that night, increasingly common as Evan and Lena navigated what it meant to be a couple with a child in the mix. They'd established a rhythm, weeknight dinners together when Lena's schedule allowed, Saturday adventures with Mila, Sunday evenings just the two of them after Mila was asleep. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. Thanksgiving arrived, and with it, a question neither of them had anticipated. Where are you going for Thanksgiving? Mila asked Lena over breakfast that Saturday morning. She'd started sleeping over sometimes, curled up on Evan's couch under a blanket, leaving early before Mila woke. But this particular morning, Mila had gotten up unusually early and found Lena in the kitchen helping Evan make pancakes. Lena and Evan exchanged glances. They'd been tiptoeing around holiday plans, neither wanting to presume too much. I usually just have a quiet dinner at home, Lena said carefully. What about you guys? We go to Mrs. Chen's house next door, Mila explained. She invites people who don't have family nearby. Last year there were 8 people. It's really fun. That sounds lovely. You should come. Mila's face lit up. Dad, Lena should come, right? Evan looked at Lena, seeing the hope and uncertainty warring in her expression. If Lena wants to come, she's absolutely welcome. But it's okay if she has other plans. I don't have other plans, Lena said quietly, and I'd love to come, if Mrs. Chen wouldn't mind an extra person. Mrs. Chen, as it turned out, was delighted. Of course, we always make too much food anyway, and it's about time Evan brought someone, she added with a meaningful look that made Evan flush. Thanksgiving Day dawned cold and crisp. Lena arrived at 10 in the morning carrying 2 pies she'd attempted to make from scratch. They were slightly lopsided but smelled incredible, and wearing jeans and a soft sweater that made her look younger, more relaxed than Evan had ever seen her. You made pies, he said, surprised and touched. I tried to make pies. The jury's still out on whether they're actually edible. She set them on the counter. I wanted to contribute something. Mrs. Chen is being so generous, inviting a stranger. You're not a stranger, you're with us. The words hung in the air, weighted with meaning. With us. A unit. A family. Mila bounded over, already dressed in her fancy Thanksgiving outfit, a dark green dress with tights and the shoes she was only allowed to wear for special occasions. Lena, do you like my dress? Dad let me pick it out myself. It's beautiful. You look like a princess. Not a princess. A paleontologist going to a fancy dinner. Mila struck a pose. There's a difference. The afternoon unfolded with the comfortable chaos of a community gathering. Mrs. Chen's apartment was packed with neighbors. An elderly couple from the third floor, a young man who just moved to Portland from California, 2 graduate students from the Philippines, and a woman with twin toddlers whose husband was deployed overseas. The food was abundant and eclectic, everyone having brought their own traditions to share. Evan watched Lena navigate the crowd with surprising ease. She helped in the kitchen without being asked, played with the twins when their mother needed a break, listened with genuine interest as the graduate students talked about their research. This was a different Lena than the CEO who commanded boardrooms. This was someone finding her way back to being simply human. At one point, Evan found her on Mrs. Chen's small balcony, looking out over the city with a contemplative expression. You okay? He asked, sliding an arm around her waist. More than okay. I was just thinking about last Thanksgiving. I ate takeout alone in my apartment while catching up on work emails. And now, she leaned into him. Now I'm here. With you and Mila and all these people who've welcomed me like I belong. It's almost overwhelming. You do belong. With us. She turned to face him, her eyes bright. I love you, Evan. The words hit him like a physical force. They'd been dancing around them for weeks, maybe longer, but hearing them out loud made them real in a way that nothing else had. I love you too, he said, and watched her face transform with joy. I think I have since you showed up at my door at 4 a.m. That was the night everything changed. Everything, he agreed, and kissed her as the Portland skyline sparkled behind them and the sound of laughter drifted through the open door. December brought cold rain and early darkness, but also an unexpected lightness. Lena's final weeks at the company were bittersweet. Saying goodbye to people she'd worked with for years, watching the Meridian team take over operations, slowly letting go of something that had defined her for so long. But when she came home to Evan's apartment afterward, exhausted and sometimes tearful, there was always comfort waiting. Mila had started calling her Lena Mom sometimes, unconsciously, before correcting herself with embarrassment. The first time it happened, Evan had tensed, waiting for Lena's reaction, but she'd simply smiled and said, You can call me whatever feels right, sweetheart. I'm not trying to replace anyone. I'm just me. What if I like Lena Mom? Mila had asked, testing the waters. Then Lena Mom works just fine. Christmas planning became an adventure in negotiation. Lena wanted to spoil Mila with gifts. Evan wanted to maintain the modest traditions they'd established. They compromised. Lena could get Mila 3 presents, nothing extravagant, and in exchange, they'd start a new tradition together. What kind of tradition? Mila asked when they told her about the plan. That's up to you, Lena said. What would make Christmas special? Mila thought for a moment with her characteristic seriousness. Can we volunteer somewhere? Like a soup kitchen or an animal shelter? Mrs. Patterson told us about how some people help others during holidays, and I think that would be nice. Evan felt his chest swell with pride. His daughter, thinking of others before herself. That's a wonderful idea, Lena said softly. Let's do that. Christmas morning arrived with Mila bursting into Evan's room at 6:30, too excited to sleep. Lena had stayed over, in the guest room technically, though the lines of propriety had been blurring for weeks. They'd had conversations about what came next, about whether Lena should get her own place, or whether it made sense for her to move in, but nothing had been decided yet. They were taking their time, being deliberate. Presents were opened with appropriate enthusiasm. Lena had gotten Mila a telescope for stargazing, a complete set of Cretaceous period dinosaur figures, and a journal with a note that said, for recording your important thoughts and discoveries. Mila loved all of it, but it was the journal she clutched as they got ready to head to the animal shelter that afternoon. "I'm going to write about today," she announced, "about helping animals and spending Christmas with my family." Her family. Plural. Including Lena without question or hesitation. The animal shelter was busy with volunteers, but they found their place, walking dogs, playing with cats, cleaning kennels. Mila was fearless with even the largest dogs, her gentle confidence putting nervous animals at ease. Lena ended up covered in cat hair after spending an hour in the kitten room, and Evan couldn't stop smiling at the sight of her, disheveled and happy, surrounded by tiny balls of fur. "We should adopt one," Lena said as they were leaving, only half joking. "We?" Evan raised an eyebrow. "I mean, if I were living with you guys, hypothetically, a cat might be nice." "Hypothetically," Evan repeated, his heart racing. "Yes, Dad, hypothetically," Mila chimed in. "Can we get a cat, please?" "Let's table the cat discussion for now," Evan said, but he was grinning. The casual way Lena had said, "if I were living with you," like it was inevitable, just a matter of timing. That evening, after Mila was asleep, they sat in the dim glow of the Christmas tree lights, and Lena broached the subject properly. "I've been thinking about my lease," she said. "It's up in February, right when my transition ends. And I could renew, or I could—" She trailed off, suddenly nervous. "Or you could move in here," Evan finished, "with us. Is that crazy? It's only been 4 months since we made this official. Most people would say that's too fast. Most people aren't us." Evan took her hand. "But it's not just my decision. This affects Mila too. We need to make sure she's ready." "How do we do that?" "We ask her." The next morning, over breakfast, Evan and Lena sat Mila down for what they'd decided to frame as a family meeting, a term that made Mila's eyes go wide with importance. "Sweetheart, we want to talk to you about something," Evan began. "You know how Lena has been spending a lot of time here?" "Yeah, she basically lives here already," Mila said matter-of-factly. "She has a toothbrush in the bathroom, and everything." Evan and Lena exchanged amused glances. "Well, we were thinking about making that official, about Lena actually moving in with us. But only if you're comfortable with that. This is your home too, and your opinion matters." Mila set down her spoon, considering this with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. Would she sleep in the guest room or with you? The directness of the question caught them both off guard. "With me?" Evan said honestly. "Is that okay?" "I guess so. Mom used to sleep with you before she left." Said so simply, so matter-of-fact, but the words still carried weight. "That's true," Evan acknowledged. "But this is different. Lena is choosing to be here, choosing us. And if at any point you're not happy or comfortable, we need you to tell us." "Will things change a lot?" "Some things will change," Lena said gently. "I'll be here more consistently. I'll probably do more of the cooking since I'll actually have time now. But the important things, your time with your dad, your routines, the things that make you feel safe, those won't change unless you want them to." Mila looked between them, her young face serious. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, you can move in, but we have rules." "Rules?" Lena asked, trying not to smile. "Yes. First, we still have Dad and Mila time every week, just us. Second, you have to let me help with cooking sometimes, even if I'm not very good at it yet. Third," she paused dramatically, "we get a cat." Evan laughed. "You've been planning this negotiation, haven't you? Mrs. Chen says good compromises mean everyone gets something they want, so?" "Deal," Lena said, extending her hand formally. Mila shook it with equal solemnity. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of logistics. Lena's apartment was beautiful but impersonal, expensive furniture that looked good but held no memories. She donated most of it, keeping only a few meaningful pieces. Her books, though, were another story. She had hundreds of them, filling boxes that seemed to multiply overnight. "I didn't realize you were such a reader," Evan commented, helping her pack. "I used to read all the time. Then I got busy and forgot how much I loved it." She ran her hand over a worn copy of Middlemarch. "I'm hoping to remember." Moving day was January 15th, unseasonably warm for Portland. Mila helped by directing where boxes should go, acting as tiny foreman with clipboard in hand. Evan and Lena did the actual heavy lifting, laughing when they got stuck trying to maneuver Lena's reading chair through the doorway. By evening, the apartment looked different. More crowded, certainly, but also more complete. Lena's books lined a new bookshelf they'd bought. Her clothes hung in Evan's closet, which they'd cleared out to make room. Small touches everywhere announced her presence. Her favorite coffee mug in the kitchen, her soft throw blanket on the couch, framed photos she'd brought of the three of them mixed in with Evan and Mila's existing family pictures. That night, after everything was unpacked and Mila was asleep, Evan and Lena stood in the middle of the living room surveying their merged life. "This is really happening," Lena whispered. "We're actually doing this." Having second thoughts? Not even for a second, just amazed. 6 months ago, I was alone and convinced that was my fate. Now look at us. Look at us, Evan echoed, pulling her close. Building something real. February brought Lena's official last day at Whitmore Analytics. The company threw her a retirement party, though at 43, retirement felt like the wrong word. It was more like liberation. People gave speeches about her vision and leadership. The Meridian executives praised her smooth transition. Evan stood in the back, watching the woman he loved accept accolades with grace and obvious relief. When it was her turn to speak, Lena kept it brief. "I built this company because I needed to prove something to myself," she said, "that I was capable, that I could succeed on my own terms, and I did that. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that success isn't just what you build. It's who you build it with and whether you're happy while doing it. I'm grateful for every person in this room, for every challenge we faced together, for every victory we celebrated. But I'm also grateful for the chance to start something new, to discover who I am when I'm not CEO of anything except my own life." Her eyes found Evan in the crowd, and she smiled. "Someone recently reminded me that jobs and titles aren't what matter at the end of the day. People matter, relationships matter. Everything else is just structure. So thank you for being part of my structure. And here's to whatever comes next." The applause was thunderous. Evan felt tears prick his eyes, proud and moved and grateful that she'd taken that leap. March arrived with cherry blossoms and the promise of spring. Lena had been unemployed for a month, though she'd hardly been idle. She'd accepted the board position with the Seattle nonprofit, which meant one trip north every few weeks, but mostly remote work. She'd started volunteering at Mila's school, helping with the peer mediation program. She'd even taken up cooking with a vengeance, determined to master more than 3 dishes. "How did I become a housewife?" she joked one evening after making a surprisingly successful lasagna. "I used to run a company." "You're not a housewife, you're just taking a breath," Evan said, "figuring out what makes you happy." "You make me happy. Mila makes me happy. This..." She gestured around the kitchen at the normal chaos of dinner preparation. "Makes me happy." Who knew? The cat arrived in late March, a rescue kitten with gray fur and enormous green eyes. Mila named her Paleo, short for paleontologist, which the cat absolutely did not care about. But Paleo quickly became part of the family, curling up on Lena's lap while she read, helping Mila with homework by sitting on her papers, following Evan around the apartment like a tiny shadow. "We're disgustingly domestic," Lena observed one Saturday morning, watching Evan make breakfast while Mila gave Paleo elaborate instructions about proper cat behavior. "Is that a complaint?" "Not even a little bit." April brought Mila's 7th birthday, which they celebrated with a small party at the park. Chloe came, and several other kids from school, and Tommy Richards' mother was conspicuously absent when he arrived with his father, a quiet man who apologized profusely for his son's past behavior and thanked Evan for being understanding. Tommy had been in counseling, he explained, and was doing much better. "Kids make mistakes," Evan said graciously. "The important thing is learning from them." Watching Tommy and Mila play together, not friends exactly, but no longer adversaries, Evan felt a sense of closure. Everything had worked out. Even the hard things had found their resolution. Lena organized the entire party with military precision, which made Evan laugh because she'd been worried about being useful without a job. She was useful. She was essential. She just didn't need a corporate title to prove it. That evening, after all the guests had gone and Mila was sugar-crashed in bed, Evan and Lena cleaned up the party debris together. "Thank you for today," he said, "for making it special for her." "It's easy to make things special when you love the person you're celebrating." Lena paused, setting down the trash bag she'd been filling. "Evan, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." His heart kicked up. "Okay. Are you happy? Really happy? Because sometimes I worry that you took me on as some kind of project, that you saw someone broken and decided to fix them, and now you're stuck with me." "Lena, let me finish. I know I've changed your life. I moved into your home, became part of your daughter's world, disrupted your carefully built routine, and I just need to know that you don't regret it, that this isn't a burden you're carrying because you're too kind to tell me the truth." Evan set down his own trash bag and took both her hands. "Look at me." She did, her eyes vulnerable. "You didn't disrupt my life. You completed it. Yes, things are different now. The apartment is more crowded. There's cat hair everywhere. I have to share my closet and sometimes fight for bathroom time in the morning." He smiled. "But I've never been happier. I wake up every morning grateful that you're here, grateful that Mila has you, grateful that I get to love you and be loved by you. You're not a burden, Lena. You're the best thing that's happened to me since Mila was born." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes." "I know. I feel it too. That terrifying, wonderful certainty that this is it. This is what I want for the rest of my life." "The rest of your life?" she whispered. "That's a long time." "I hope so." He pulled her closer. "Lena Whitmore, will you marry me?" The words came out without planning, without a ring or a carefully orchestrated proposal. Just raw honesty in a kitchen full of birthday party debris with their cat meowing in the background. Lena stared at him, shocked. "Are you serious?" "Completely. I don't have a ring yet. I hadn't planned to ask tonight, but I can't think of a better moment than this. You and me, cleaning up after my daughter's birthday, living the life we've built together. This is what forever looks like to me. So yes, I'm serious." "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, absolutely yes." They kissed, and it tasted like promise and certainty and coming home. When they broke apart, they were both crying and laughing. "Should we tell Mila?" Lena asked. "In the morning. Let's just have tonight be ours." But Mila, as it turned out, had other plans. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, rubbing her eyes sleepily, Palio clutched in her arms. "I heard talking. Are you guys okay?" Evan and Lena looked at each other, silently asking permission. Then Lena knelt down to Mila's level. "We're more than okay, sweetheart. Your dad just asked me to marry him, and I said yes. How do you feel about that?" Mila's eyes widened. She looked from Lena to Evan and back again. "You mean like, you'll be married? For real?" "For real," Evan confirmed. "If that's okay with you." "Will you be my mom then? Like officially?" Lena's voice was thick with emotion. "I'll be your stepmom, officially. But I hope I can be someone you trust and love, whatever we call it." Mila set down the cat and threw her arms around Lena's neck. "I already trust you. I already love you. I'm happy you're staying forever." "Me too, baby. Me too." The wedding was small and perfect, held in early June at a garden in Portland with only close friends and family. Mila was the flower girl, taking her duties with utmost seriousness, and she'd helped design Lena's bouquet. White roses mixed with tiny dinosaur figurines, which shouldn't have worked but somehow did. Evan's brother came from Seattle, bringing his own family. They'd reconnected over the past months, Evan reaching out after years of silence, realizing that life was too short to hold grudges. Mrs. Chen was there, beaming with pride. Rebecca from work, who'd become a genuine friend to both of them. A handful of Lena's former colleagues. The woman from the nonprofit board who'd become her mentor in this new phase of life. When Lena walked down the makeshift aisle, Evan felt his breath catch. She wore a simple cream dress, her hair loose around her shoulders, and she was smiling so wide it must have hurt. She looked radiant. She looked happy. She looked like everything he'd never let himself imagine he could have. They'd written their own vows. Evan went first, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "Lena, You knocked on my door in the middle of the night, and I opened it without knowing my life was about to change completely. You were brave enough to be vulnerable, to ask for what you needed, to take a chance on something that didn't make sense on paper. You taught me that being careful isn't the same as being safe, that real love requires risk, that the best things in life are the ones you least expect. I promise to love you, to support your dreams, to share my daughter and my life with you, and to never take for granted the gift of your presence. You're my partner, my love, my home. Thank you for choosing us. But Lena was already crying when she began her vows. Evan, I spent so many years building walls and convincing myself they were protecting me. Then I met you, and you didn't try to tear down those walls. You just gently showed me there was a door, and I could open it if I wanted. You've given me more than love. You've given me a family, a daughter who calls me Lena Mom and teaches me about dinosaurs. A life that has room for softness and joy and small, perfect moments. I promise to love Mila as fiercely as I love you, to show up every day, even when it's hard, to build a life with you that's full of laughter and honesty and those 4 a.m. conversations where we figure out who we're becoming. Thank you for taking a chance on a CEO who showed up at your door crying. Thank you for seeing me. When the officiant pronounced them married, the kiss was sweet and soft and full of promise. Mila cheered louder than anyone, and Paleo, who'd somehow snuck into the ceremony, meowed approval from under a chair. The reception was in Mrs. Chen's backyard, strung with lights and filled with music and laughter. Evan danced with his daughter, then with his wife, while guests celebrated around them. It was nothing like the wedding Lena might have imagined years ago, when she was building her empire and thinking she had to do everything alone. It was better. It was real. Late in the evening, when most guests had left and Mila had fallen asleep on Mrs. Chen's couch, Evan and Lena stood under the string lights, swaying to music only they could hear. Mrs. Whitmore Brooks, Evan murmured, has a nice ring to it. They'd decided to hyphenate, both of them taking each other's names, a joining, not a subsumption. Mr. Brooks Whitmore, she countered, also nice. We could just keep our own names. We could, but I like the symbolism. 2 people becoming one family. She rested her head against his chest. Is this what happiness feels like? Because I barely recognize it. Get used to it. You're stuck with it now. Good. They stood there as the evening deepened into night, as stars emerged above Portland's light pollution, as their new life stretched out before them full of possibility and promise. 6 months later, on a cold December evening, there was a knock on the door at exactly 4:00 a.m. Evan jerked awake, his heart pounding with familiar panic before he remembered. He wasn't alone anymore. Lena stirred beside him. What was that? She mumbled, still half asleep. Someone's at the door. He checked his phone. It's 4 a.m. Who? Understanding dawned on both of them simultaneously. The anniversary of that first knock, the one that had changed everything. Evan got up, pulling on a robe, and went to the door. When he opened it, Lena was standing there in her own robe, her hair messy from sleep, a mischievous smile on her face. Hi, she said. You're the one I want. Evan's throat tightened with emotion. You drove around the block just to knock on the door? I wanted to recreate the moment, to show you how far we've come. She stepped closer. A year ago, I knocked on this door because I was desperate and alone and didn't know where else to go. Tonight, I knocked on this door because I wanted to remind us both, that this is where I belong, that choosing to open the door was the best decision you ever made. Second best, Evan corrected, pulling her inside and into his arms. The best decision was asking you to marry me. Fair point. They stood there in the doorway, holding each other as they'd done countless times before, and Evan marveled at how much had changed in 12 months. A year ago, he'd been alone with his daughter, going through the motions, convinced that this was enough. Now he had a wife who challenged and loved him in equal measure. A daughter who was thriving with an expanded family. A cat that had somehow become central to all their lives. A home that was crowded and loud and perfect. Come back to bed, he murmured. We can celebrate our anniversary properly in the morning. Actually, I have one more surprise. She pulled back just enough to hand him a small wrapped box. Evan opened it carefully, revealing a framed photo, the one he'd taken at the zoo of Lena and Mila laughing at the elephants. But this frame was special, engraved along the bottom with words that made his eyes sting with tears. The family we choose, the love we build, the door we open. Lena, he breathed, I wanted you to have something that captured what we've created. Not the wedding photos or the official pictures. This moment when we were just us, being happy. Evan set the frame down carefully and pulled his wife close again. I love you. More than I thought I could love anyone. I love you too. Thank you for opening the door. Always, he promised. For you, always. They went back to bed, curled around each other in the darkness, and Evan thought about the unpredictability of life. How you could be going along, following your routine, thinking you had it all figured out. And then someone knocks on your door at 4 a.m. and everything changes. Sometimes the scariest thing you can do is let someone in. But sometimes letting someone in is the only way to find out what you've been missing. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, if you're brave enough to take the risk, letting someone in means finding the family you didn't know you needed, the love you didn't know existed, the life you never imagined could be yours. Evan had opened his door to a woman in crisis. He'd found a partner, a wife, a future. He'd found everything. And it had all started with 3 sharp knocks in the middle of the night and the courage to answer.